Picture this for a second. A man is lying flat on his back, strapped to a hospital cot in a cave somewhere in the mountains of Afghanistan. His chest is split open, wires running into his rib cage, a car battery sitting on the table beside him, humming quietly in the dark. He has no idea where he is. He has no idea who took him. And the only thing keeping his heart beating right now is a magnet that's stopping a piece of shrapnel from sliding straight into the muscle and killing him in less than a minute. This guy was, just 2 days ago, the richest, smartest, most arrogant weapons manufacturer on the planet. The kind of man who walked into a desert in a $1,000 suit, cracked jokes about scotch, and sold missiles to soldiers like he was selling sneakers. He had everything: money, influence, women, a penthouse the size of a small country. And he genuinely, honestly believed that he was the smartest man in any room he walked into. And now he's a prisoner. Now the weapons he designed, the weapons he was so proud of, the weapons he built his entire empire on, are sitting in crates around him, pointed at children, pointed at families, pointed at anyone unlucky enough to live near the wrong patch of dust. The men who kidnapped him want him to build them the most powerful missile he ever designed, and if he doesn't, they're going to kill him. Slowly. Now here's the part that gets me, because if this were any other rich guy, any other smug billionaire with a chip the size of a city block on his shoulder, this is where the story ends. They build the missile, they die anyway, roll credits. But this guy decides he's going to do something stupid, something completely impossible, something that, if it works, is going to flip his entire life upside down and turn him into a man he doesn't even recognize. He's going to build a suit, a flying suit, a suit of iron. And he's going to walk out of that cave a different person than the one who walked in. This is the entire story of Tony Stark. The genius, the drunk, the father, the fool, the hero, the man who started this whole thing, and the man who ended it. So sit back, get comfortable, because we're going through every single moment of his journey, from cocky weapons dealer to the guy who saved the entire universe. And trust me, you're going to feel things. Alright, so to really understand Tony, we have to start before the cave. We have to start with where this guy came from. Because Tony Stark didn't just appear out of nowhere as the richest man on Earth. He inherited it. His father, Howard Stark, was the original genius, the original showman, the guy who helped build the first atomic bomb, designed the shield Captain America carried into World War II, founded S.H.I.E.L.D., and basically built the modern American defense industry brick by brick. Howard was a legend, a myth, a flag-waving, scotch-drinking, larger-than-life icon. And he was also, by every account that comes out later in this story, kind of a terrible dad. Cold, distant, demanding, always working, always more interested in his next big project than his actual flesh and blood son. Tony grew up in a house the size of a museum, with butlers and engineers and government men constantly walking through the halls, and his father barely looking up from the workbench long enough to remember his birthday. There's a moment, much later in this story, when Tony watches an old recording of his father, and Howard says something he never said to his face. He says Tony is his greatest creation. And you can see Tony's eyes go wet, because he spent his entire life trying to hear those words. And the only time he ever does, it's from a dead man on a flickering screen. That's the wound. That's the thing underneath everything Tony Stark ever does. Daddy didn't say I love you. So I'm going to be so big, so loud, so impossibly successful that the entire world has to. There's a story Tony tells in passing, much later, about an event from his childhood. He was about 6. He had built something, some little gadget, some toy engine or contraption out of spare parts he'd scavenged from his father's workshop. He brought it upstairs, holding it in both hands, beaming, and presented it to Howard like it was the crown jewels. Howard, busy with paperwork, barely looked up. He patted Tony on the head, told him it was nice, and went back to whatever drawing he was sketching. Tony stood there for a few seconds, waiting for something more. Anything more. A question, a comment about the design, a follow-up. There was nothing. He took the gadget back downstairs and put it in a drawer. He never showed his father anything he built again. That's the kind of small, quiet wound that becomes a foundation. That's the kind of moment that, in a person, turns into a 30-year-long performance. Tony spent the rest of his life trying to build something so big, so loud, so impossibly impressive that the entire planet would have to stop and look up at him the way his father never did. And it would never, ever fill the hole. Not really. Not even close. There's also Jarvis, the real one, the flesh and blood human butler who basically raised Tony in that giant mansion when his parents were too busy to do it themselves. Edwin Jarvis was the man who packed Tony's school lunches, drove him to soccer practice, attended his birthday parties when Howard was on the other side of the country, stayed up with him when he was sick. The AI that Tony builds decades later in his basement is named after this man, because Jarvis was the closest thing to a real father Tony ever had. And when the real Jarvis eventually died, when Tony was a teenager, it was a wound he never fully talked about. Not in interviews, not with friends, not with Pepper. But Pepper noticed, sometimes, that Tony would mention Jarvis's name in passing in a way he never mentioned Howard's. Soft, warm, real. The kind of voice you use when you're talking about someone you actually loved. When Tony was 21, his parents died in a car crash on a snowy road in 1991.
Now, the story he was told is that it was an accident, a regular, tragic car wreck. And for decades, that's what he believes. We'll come back to that little bombshell later, because trust me, when he finds out what really happened, it shatters him. But for now, for young Tony, it's just sudden, brutal grief. One day his parents are alive, the next day he's the head of one of the largest corporations on planet Earth, and he's not even old enough to rent a car. He inherits Stark Industries, and he inherits the legacy. And from the outside, he handles it like a champion. He becomes a media darling, a celebrity, a genius engineer who can disassemble and rebuild any weapon system on the planet in an afternoon. He buys yachts, he throws parties, he sleeps with reporters, he goes through assistants like other people go through napkins. By the time we meet him in his late 30s, he is, on paper, living the perfect life. He has a best friend named James Rhodes, an Air Force colonel who is basically the only person who can keep him grounded. He has a personal assistant named Pepper Potts, a brilliant, no-nonsense redhead who runs his entire life and pretends she's not in love with him. And he has a small army of robots in his basement that he treats like pets. One of them is named Dummy, and Dummy is, as the name suggests, not the brightest. There's also Jarvis, the AI butler who runs his house and his armor and is basically the closest thing Tony has to a real father figure. Which is funny because Jarvis was named after a real human butler who helped raise Tony when his actual dad wouldn't. The problem is, none of this is real to him. Tony isn't happy. He's just busy. He's just loud. He's just so distracted by his own brilliance that he doesn't have time to think about whether any of it means anything. He builds weapons because his father built weapons. He sells them to the United States military because that's what Stark Industries does. He never asks where they go. He never asks who they're used on. He never, ever looks past the next demonstration, the next contract, the next magazine cover. And that's the man we meet at the start of this story. A guy in a beautiful gray suit sitting in the back of a Humvee in Afghanistan, holding a glass of scotch and making bad jokes about whether the soldiers driving him are real or just very serious actors. Oh, by the way, he's late for the demonstration. Of course he is. He had to gamble at a casino the night before in Vegas. He had to take an award from Rhodey. He had to sleep with a journalist named Christine Everhart, who showed up to interview him about his ethics, of which he has approximately none. He's pulled into a private jet by his bodyguard Happy Hogan, flown halfway around the world, and now here he is, 10,000 feet above sea level, about to show off the most beautiful, terrible weapon he has ever designed. He calls it the Jericho. It's a missile that launches and then releases a swarm of smaller missiles, blanketing a target zone with explosions. He shows the army officers a hillside, presses a button, and the whole mountain ripples with fire. It's a magnificent piece of engineering. It's also, when you really think about it, an obscenity. And nobody in the convoy thinks about it. They just clap, they pour scotch, they get back in the trucks. And Tony slides into the back of one of the Humvees with the soldiers, cracks more bad jokes, takes a few selfies, and then everything goes wrong all at once.
The convoy gets ambushed. An explosion takes out the first vehicle. Bullets start tearing through the metal. The soldiers Tony was just laughing with 2 minutes ago are dead in seconds. Tony scrambles out of the Humvee, ducks behind a rock, and starts trying to make a call on his phone, which is the most Tony Stark thing he could possibly do in this moment. And then he sees something land in the dirt next to him. He looks down, and the name on the side of the missile is the one thing he never expected to see in a place like this. It says Stark. His own weapon, his own design, his own product in the hands of people who are trying to kill him. The missile explodes. Shrapnel rips into his chest through his very expensive bulletproof vest, lodging itself deep into his body, inches from his heart. He blacks out. And when he wakes up, he's in that cave. There's a man hovering over him. A doctor. Stitched up, bleeding, exhausted. His name is Yinsen, and he is the single most important person Tony Stark has ever met, even though they only know each other for a few weeks. Yinsen has performed emergency surgery on him in conditions that would make any modern surgeon want to weep. He's used a magnet hooked up to a car battery to pull as much of the shrapnel as he can out of Tony's chest. The pieces that he can't get, they're sitting in there, waiting to travel into Tony's heart at the first opportunity. And the magnet is the only thing holding them back. If the battery dies, Tony dies. That's it. That's the rules now. Yinsen, by the way, is a man Tony has actually met before. They crossed paths years ago at a science conference in Bern. Yinsen was a brilliant physician, an attendee at the same talk Tony gave, and they spoke briefly at a bar afterward. Tony was, of course, drunk, surrounded by women, and barely remembered the conversation. Yinsen, on the other hand, remembered every word. Because Yinsen was the kind of man who remembered every interaction with every person he ever met. He had a quiet dignity about him, a calm that you couldn't fake, the kind of presence that made you feel, in just a few minutes, that he had seen things you couldn't imagine and had decided, despite all of it, to keep going. He was the opposite of Tony in every measurable way. And now they're stuck in a cave together, and Yinsen is the one keeping Tony alive. The men who kidnapped him are a terrorist group called the 10 Rings. Their leader is a man named Raza. He tells Tony, through a translator at first, and then in perfect English later, that he wants Tony to build him a Jericho. Build it for us, and we will let you go. Refuse, and we will kill you. They show Tony the warehouse of weapons they have stockpiled. All of them are Stark Industries products. All of them are things he personally designed. And in that moment, sitting in a cave halfway around the world from his penthouse, Tony Stark sees, for the first time in his life, the actual cost of who he is. He sees what his life's work really does in the world. He sees the body count. He sees the wreckage. He sees children running through villages full of his missiles, and he understands, finally, that the man he's been pretending to be is a monster. Yinsen tells him, calmly, that he has a wife and a family. Or he had. The 10 Rings killed them. He says, "Don't waste your life, Stark. Don't waste it." Those words land. Those words burrow into Tony's chest right next to the shrapnel, and they never leave. There's another moment, a smaller one, that gets less attention, but I think about it a lot. The two of them are playing a board game one night by the light of a single bulb in the cave between welding sessions. Yinsen is winning. Tony is losing, badly. And in the middle of the game, Yinsen, almost casually, mentions that his family is on the other side. That he is going to see them when this is over, one way or another. That he is not afraid. Tony, the man who has spent his entire life being afraid of everything underneath all the bravado, looks at him across the chessboard and doesn't say anything. Because for the first time in his life, he's met a man who is genuinely not scared. Not of dying. Not of pain. Not of anything. Yinsen has already lost the things he loved most. There's nothing left to take from him. And the calm of that, the peace of that, sits in the cave like a third presence. So Tony agrees to build the missile. But of course, he's lying. He has no intention of building them anything. What he's actually doing is way, way more ambitious. He starts taking the parts the 10 rings give him, the missile components, the metal, the electronics, and he starts designing something completely different. He starts with the power source. Because the magnet on his chest is barely keeping him alive, and a car battery isn't a long-term solution, so he miniaturizes a piece of technology his father started working on decades ago. He builds a tiny, palm-sized power generator, an arc reactor. It puts out 3 gigajoules per second, enough to keep the magnet running for 50 years, or to power something much bigger for about 15 minutes. And he installs it into his own chest. Yinsen does the surgery, slotting this glowing blue circle of light right into the cavity of Tony's ribcage. It's grotesque and beautiful at the same time. From now on, Tony Stark glows. From now on, there's a light inside him that wasn't there before. And then they get to work. For weeks, Tony and Yinsen build, in secret, hidden behind sheets of metal and crates of weapons, a suit. An armored, walking, weaponized suit. Plated head to toe in metal scrap, powered by the arc reactor in Tony's chest. It looks like something out of a nightmare. Like a knight built by a blacksmith with a vendetta. Tony designs every piece. Yinsen helps him weld and assemble, and they hide it in plain sight, pretending they're just slowly building the missile the 10 rings asked for. They have conversations during those weeks. Quiet, late-night conversations by the light of welding torches. Yinsen asks Tony if he has a family. Tony says no. No one waiting for him. No one back home. And there's a sadness in his voice when he says it that he didn't even know was there. Yinsen tells him that's a sad thing. That a man with everything is also a man with nothing. When the suit is finally ready, the 10 rings start to get suspicious. They notice the workshop has stopped producing missile parts. They give Tony an ultimatum. Build the Jericho today or die. So Tony and Yinsen seal themselves inside the workshop, barricade the door, and Yinsen starts the long, slow process of booting up the suit. There's a problem though. They've run out of time. They need a few more minutes. The 10 rings are at the door, trying to break through. And Yinsen, without saying a word to Tony, grabs a rifle and runs out into the cave on his own, screaming, drawing the gunfire, buying his friend the time he needs. Tony is locked inside the iron, sealed in metal, watching the timer count down. By the time the suit boots up, by the time the helmet snaps into place and the eyes glow with that pale electric light, Yinsen is bleeding out on the floor of the cave with 3 bullets in his chest. Tony walks out of that workshop like a monster. The 10 rings shoot at him. The bullets bounce off. They throw grenades. The grenades crack against the armor and do nothing. He punches one of them through a wall. He sets another one on fire. And then he gets to Yinsen, who is propped up against a rock, dying. Tony kneels next to him. "We have to go," he says. "Come on, we have to go." And Yinsen, blood on his teeth, looks up at him and says, "This was always how it was going to end. My family is waiting for me. Don't waste it, Stark. Don't waste your life." And then he dies, and Tony, in a suit of iron, kneels on the floor of a cave on the other side of the world. And for the first time since he was a small boy, he cries. He flips the script after that. He stops being scared. He turns into something else. He walks out into the open desert, and he uses the suit's flamethrowers to set every single weapon, every Stark Industries missile, every crate of ammunition the 10 Rings have stockpiled, on fire. He blows up their compound. And then he turns on the boot jets in the suit, fires up the thrusters, and he flies. Just barely. The suit is heavy and the propulsion is unstable, and he flies for maybe 20 seconds before the systems blow and he crashes into the sand a mile away. The armor breaks apart on impact. He pulls himself out of the wreckage, alone, dehydrated, half dead, and starts walking. That's the man Rhodey finds. A helicopter scans the desert, and there's Tony Stark, in tattered clothes, hair caked with sweat and sand, an arc reactor glowing in his chest, walking through the dunes like a ghost. Rhodey lands the chopper, jumps out, and the first words out of his mouth are something like, "Don't ever scare me like that again." And Tony, in classic Tony fashion, manages a tired smile and says something like, "Next time, you ride with me." He gets put on a medical flight back to America. He's been gone for 3 months. The world thought he was dead. The world is about to find out he is very much not. Pepper is waiting for him on the tarmac. The press is waiting for him on the tarmac. Obadiah Stane, his father's old business partner and basically Tony's surrogate uncle, is waiting for him on the tarmac. And the very first thing Tony does, before he even goes to the hospital, before he even sees his doctor, is he tells the driver to take him to a burger place because he wants an American cheeseburger. That detail tells you everything about him. 3 months in a cave, surgery on his chest, just witnessed a man die for him, and his first thought is, "You know what? I want a cheeseburger." That's Tony. That has always been Tony. The man can't take a single dramatic moment seriously, even when it's about him. But everyone notices, in the press conference he holds right after, that something has changed. He doesn't stand at the podium. He sits on the floor, in front of all the reporters, and tells them to gather around. And then he says, very calmly, that Stark Industries is shutting down its weapons manufacturing division. Effective immediately. He tells them he's seen what his weapons do in the wrong hands. He tells them he's not making any more, ever again. And the room explodes. Reporters start shouting. Obadiah Stane goes white as a sheet. Cameras flash. The stock price tanks in real time. He has just, with a few sentences, single-handedly attempted to dismantle the empire his father built, and that he himself has spent his entire adult life expanding. Why? Because he met Yinsen. Because he saw what he was actually doing. Because 3 months in a cave changed him on a chemical level. He is no longer the man who walked into that desert. And he is going to spend the rest of his life trying to make up for everything he did before he learned. Back home, in his cliffside mansion, he gets to work in his basement. He starts redesigning the suit. The first one, the cave version, was crude and heavy. The new one is going to be sleek, aerodynamic. He spends weeks in his workshop, with Jarvis as his only company, testing flight stabilizers, calibrating thrusters, painting the armor red and gold because, in his words, the silver looked a little too candy apple. He cracks ribs flying into ceilings. He sets his own kitchen on fire. He goes through prototypes the way other people go through coffee cups. And the whole time, the only person who knows what he's doing is Pepper, who has gone from being his assistant to being something else, something they both refuse to talk about. She finds him bleeding on the floor of his workshop after one of his test flights, and she just sighs, hands him a towel, and asks him to please not die before she finishes the paperwork on the desk upstairs. His other big problem is the arc reactor. The one in his chest is leaking. The palladium core is degrading. He needs a replacement. He asks Pepper to swap it out for him. The scene where she does this is one of the most intimate, awkward, emotionally raw moments in his entire story. He's lying on a table, shirt off, glowing reactor in his ribs, and he calmly walks her through how to reach into his chest cavity, pull out the old reactor, and slide a new one in. She is horrified. Her hands are shaking. She tells him she doesn't want to touch his exposed heart. She tells him she will quit if he ever asks her to do this again. He laughs and tells her he doesn't have anyone else. And in that line, in that one quiet sentence, the whole truth comes out. She is the only person he trusts. She is the only person who knows. There is no one else. And from this moment on, she is no longer just his assistant. She is the most important person in his life. While Tony is rebuilding his suit, things are happening behind his back. The new weapons division stoppage has caused chaos at Stark Industries. Obadiah Stane, the man Tony has known since he was a child, the man who took over the company when his parents died, the man who has always been at his side, is not happy. The board is talking about removing Tony as CEO. Stane is publicly pretending to be supportive. Privately, he's plotting. And the audience finds out something Tony doesn't. The reason Tony was kidnapped in the first place wasn't an accident. It wasn't random. Obadiah Stane hired the 10 Rings to assassinate him. The whole thing was a setup. Stane wanted Tony dead so he could take Stark Industries for himself. The only reason Tony is alive is because the terrorists Stane hired decided to keep him alive and try to use him for their own ends. The betrayal is total. The man Tony thinks of as family, the man who clapped him on the shoulder and welcomed him home from Afghanistan, is the same man who tried to have him murdered. Tony figures out something is wrong slowly. He starts hearing reports of Stark Industries' weapons being used in atrocities in a small Afghan town called Gulmira, which happens to be Yinsen's hometown. He goes home, sees footage of refugees being terrorized by 10 Rings militants with Stark guns, and he snaps. He suits up. He flies all the way to Afghanistan in his second-generation armor, the gleaming red and gold Mark III, and he descends on the village. The 10 Rings militants have the villagers lined up to be executed. Tony lands in the middle of them, takes out every single fighter in about 30 seconds, lets the villagers grab the leader and decide his fate, and then takes off again. On the way home, he gets buzzed by 2 American F-22 fighter jets sent to investigate. He outflies them. He has a phone conversation with Rhodey, who is on the radio yelling at him from the base while spinning through the air. It's ridiculous. It's glorious. It's the first time anyone outside his garage has seen what Iron Man can do. The cat is out of the bag after that. Pepper figures out his secret pretty quickly. She breaks into a Stark Industries shipping facility, on his orders, to look into where his old weapons are still being sold from. She finds files on Stane's computer that prove he was the one who hired the 10 Rings. She finds video of the assassination meeting. And she also finds something else. Schematics. Stane has been reverse engineering the wreckage of Tony's original cave suit, the one he left behind in the desert. He has shipped the parts back to the United States. And he is building his own suit. A bigger one. A meaner one. He's going to call it the Ironmonger. And he's planning to use it to take over the company and probably take over a lot more than that. Stane gets to Tony first. He walks into Tony's house, makes small talk, and then uses a paralyzing sonic device to freeze Tony mid-sentence. He sits next to him, calmly explaining everything, while Tony's eyes go wide and his body locks up. Then he reaches into Tony's chest and rips the arc reactor out. He takes it. He leaves Tony on the couch to die. The original prototype, the one Yinsen built in the cave, is the only thing keeping the shrapnel out of his heart, and Stain has just taken his working model to power his own suit. Tony has nothing. Tony is going to die in about 3 minutes.
He doesn't die. Of course he doesn't. He drags himself off the couch. He crawls across the floor. He gets into the elevator, falls down the stairs, makes it to his workshop, and barely, just barely, slots the broken original arc reactor back into his chest. The one Pepper kept on his desk in a little glass box that says, "Proof that Tony Stark has a heart." That's the title. Pepper had it engraved. And now that piece of metal, that little memorial, that joke gift, is the only thing keeping him alive. He suits up in the Mark III, blasts out of the workshop, and flies into downtown Los Angeles for the final showdown of the movie. The fight with Ironmonger is brutal. Stain's suit is twice the size of Tony's, heavier, stronger, more weapons. But it has a power problem. It's designed for ground combat, and Tony figures out he can outmaneuver Stain in the air. He lures him up to a freezing altitude where the suit's joints lock up. They both crash back to the Stark Industries building. Pepper is on the roof. Stain is trying to kill her. Tony arrives just in time. They fight on the roof of the building, surrounded by skyscrapers. Stain has Tony by the throat. Tony has an idea. He tells Pepper on the comms to overload the giant arc reactor on the roof of the Stark Industries headquarters. The same kind of reactor that's in his chest, except about 1,000 times bigger. She does it. The whole building lights up. A column of electricity blasts up into the sky. Stain is on top of Tony in the middle of it. The reactor explodes upward. Stain is fried inside his own suit. Tony survives because his armor is grounded. Stain falls into the smoking remains of the reactor itself, suit and all. And that's the end of him. Tony is alive. He's hurt. His armor is wrecked. Pepper is alive. The day is saved. And the next morning, Tony Stark walks into a press conference where his entire PR team has prepared a careful, scripted alibi. They want him to deny being Iron Man. They want him to say it was a bodyguard. They want him to lay low. Tony stands at the podium, looks down at the cards, looks up at the cameras, and says, "I am Iron Man." He drops the cards. The room explodes. The PR team's faces drain of all color. Pepper, somewhere in the back, just closes her eyes and accepts that this is who he is now. And the world changes. That night, alone in his cliffside mansion, the wreckage of his life around him, Tony walks into his living room. There's a man standing there. A tall, bald, eye-patch-wearing man in a black leather coat. He introduces himself as Nick Fury, director of an agency called S.H.I.E.L.D., and he tells Tony that Iron Man is not the only superhero on the planet. He tells him there's a bigger universe out there. He tells him about something called the Avenger Initiative. And Tony Stark, the same Tony Stark who 3 months ago was bored out of his mind selling missiles, sits on his couch and listens to a stranger tell him he might be part of something even crazier than what he just survived. That's the end of his first chapter. That's the man we have now. A man with a glowing chest, a destroyed family business, a girl he can't admit he loves, and absolutely no idea what's coming next. What comes next is a whole new kind of mess. Because being Iron Man, publicly, on camera, in the open, with his real name attached to it, is a lot more complicated than Tony expected. The next 6 months of his life are basically a montage of him cleaning up the world. He stops a coup in Eastern Europe. He prevents a hijacking over the Mediterranean. He single-handedly stabilizes about a dozen international crises that would have spiraled into wars. The world, somehow, has gotten more peaceful, not less. He calls it privatized world peace. He says it in front of a Senate committee. He winks at the camera. The senators are furious. The general public absolutely loves him. But he's also dying.
slowly, quietly. The palladium core in the arc reactor, the one keeping the shrapnel out of his heart, is poisoning him. Every time he uses the suit, every time he flies, every time he pushes himself, the core decays a little faster, and the toxicity in his bloodstream goes up. There's a number on his skin, on the back of his neck. He measures it every morning. It started in the teens. By the time we catch up with him, it's at 89. Once it hits 100, he dies. And he can't tell anyone. Not Rhodey, not Pepper, not Jarvis. He has decided that this is going to be his secret. He's going to keep saving the world, keep performing, keep being Tony Stark, right up until the moment his heart stops. Because that's how he was raised. That's how Howard would have done it. You don't show weakness. You don't ask for help. You die with a smile and a cocktail in your hand.
It's at this point that his life takes another sharp turn. The government wants the Iron Man suit. They argue, fairly, that it's a piece of military technology and Tony has no right to own it privately. Tony refuses. He sits in front of Congress and demolishes the case against him with sheer charm and arrogance and the world's fastest mouth. He humiliates a senator named Stern, who, by the way, secretly works for the bad guys, but we don't know that yet. He humiliates a competitor named Justin Hammer, an oily little weapons manufacturer who has spent his entire career being jealous of Tony Stark and who would sell his own grandmother to be half as cool. Tony walks out of that hearing victorious, smug, sure he can do this forever. And he can't. He's already drinking too much. He's already pushing Pepper away. He's already starting to feel the ground shifting under him. Halfway across the world, in a tiny apartment in Moscow, a man named Ivan Vanko is watching the hearing on his old TV. Ivan is the son of a brilliant physicist named Anton Vanko, who worked with Howard Stark, Tony's father, back in the 70s. The two of them invented the arc reactor together. And then Howard had Anton deported and ruined for trying to use the technology to enrich himself. Anton spent the rest of his life rotting in a Russian slum, drinking himself into the grave, telling his son that the Starks stole his life. Ivan is brilliant as Tony in his own way. And as his father lies dying in the next room, watching Tony Stark grin on television and call himself a peacebringer, Ivan vows to take everything the Starks have. He has his father's old schematics, and he is going to build his own arc reactor. He is going to build his own weapon. He is going to find Tony Stark, and he is going to kill him in front of the entire world. He shows up in Monaco. Tony is racing a Formula One car for charity, because of course he is. Because Tony Stark cannot resist a chance to insert himself into anything that gets him on camera. Pepper is there, furious that he didn't tell her he was going to drive. Happy is there, trying to drag Tony out of the cockpit. And right in the middle of the race, on the straightaway, a man walks out onto the track. He's wearing a janitor's jumpsuit. He has a metal harness across his chest, hooked up to an arc reactor of his own. And from his hands, he draws two long, glowing, electrified whips. He stands in the middle of the track, lashes the whips at the racing cars, and starts cutting them in half. Cars explode, drivers go flying. Tony's car gets cut clean in two right under him. He skids to a stop. Vanko walks toward him, whips cracking, and Tony is in a tuxedo with no armor. He's about to die. Happy and Pepper come screaming up the track in Tony's other car. They smash into Vanko. They roll over him. Pepper throws Tony a suitcase. It's a portable, briefcase-sized version of his armor. He punches the case open and the armor wraps itself around him in seconds. A beautiful piece of engineering, the first time we see this suit. He stands up in red and gold, in a slightly bulkier version of the mark, and he fights Vanko hand-to-hand on the racetrack. He grabs the whips, he tears them apart. He smashes Vanko's reactor. He puts him down. The cops drag Vanko away, and the international press, every single camera in the world, has just watched a man with electric whips try to murder Tony Stark in the middle of a public race.
The world is no longer feeling so safe about the idea of a guy in a flying suit. People are starting to wonder what happens if someone else, someone worse, gets the same idea. Tony goes to visit Vanko in prison. He sits across from him in a small cell. He tells him his tech is laughable. He tells him his father was a thief. He tells him a lot of cruel things, mostly because he's terrified. Because he saw Vanko's reactor, and he knew Vanko built it from his father's plans. And he is starting to understand that his family's secret is not as secret as he thought. Vanko looks at him through the bars and smiles. He tells Tony that if he could make God bleed, people will cease to believe in him. He tells Tony that the next person who comes for him will not be him, but it will be his idea. And those words, just like Yinsen's words in the cave, sink into Tony. They never leave. He walks out of that prison shaken. He gets on his plane, he flies home, and he starts to drink. Hard. This is the worst version of Tony Stark we have ever seen. Worse than the man before the cave. Because the man before the cave was just empty. The man after Monaco is dying, scared, lonely, and slowly losing his mind. He gets drunk on his birthday, in his own suit, in front of a house full of guests, with Pepper begging him to stop. He starts shooting watermelons in his living room. He destroys his own kitchen. He insults Pepper in front of everyone. He pushes her away on purpose because he knows he's going to be dead in weeks. And he can't stand the thought of her watching him die. There's a quiet moment earlier that night, before everything goes to pieces, where Pepper finds him standing alone on a balcony. He's in the suit. He has a glass of champagne in one gauntleted hand. He's looking out at the ocean. She comes up next to him. She tells him this is enough. She tells him he doesn't have to do the show tonight. She tells him he can take the suit off and just be himself for 1 hour. And Tony, in that armor, with a face full of nothing, looks at her and tells her he doesn't know who that is anymore. He doesn't know who Tony Stark is without the suit. He says it like a joke, like a throwaway line. And Pepper, who has spent a decade reading him like a book, hears the truth underneath it. She doesn't say anything. She just walks away. And he stays out on the balcony, in metal, alone, until the party goes from bad to nightmare. Rhodey shows up to try to stop him. They get into a fist fight. They're both in armor. They smash through walls. They wreck the entire mansion. Tony, drunk in the armor, blasts a wine cellar to dust. Rhodey, horrified at his best friend, decides he can't watch this anymore. He puts on a prototype Mark suit that has been sitting in the basement, the one Tony was supposed to give to the military, and he flies away with it. He delivers it to the Air Force the next morning. He calls it War Machine. And just like that, Tony Stark is alone in his wrecked house, in a wrecked suit, with no friends left and no plan, and a poison count of 95 out of 100. He sits in an outdoor donut shop the next day, in the suit, eating a donut inside the giant donut sign, drunk on champagne and tequila. And a man with one eye walks up to him. Nick Fury, again, looking less amused than the last time. Fury basically picks him up by the collar, takes him to a SHIELD office, and forces him to look at himself. He tells Tony he is not the man his father was. He tells Tony he has more to give. And then he reveals something that changes everything. Fury has files on Howard Stark that Tony has never seen. Howard worked for SHIELD. Howard was a founding member. Howard left behind a whole archive of work that the government has been holding for decades. And Fury hands Tony a single trunk, the personal effects of his father, things Tony has never been allowed to see. Tony takes the trunk home. He spreads everything out on the floor of his wrecked workshop. Photographs, notebooks, drawings, a reel of film from the Stark Expo of 1974. He sits on the floor and watches it, alone, in the dark. And there, on the flickering screen, is his father. Howard Stark, in a sharp suit, talking about a city of the future, talking about a world where humanity solves all its problems through science. And then Howard pauses, looks straight at the camera, and says, I'm limited by the technology of my time. But one day, you will figure it out. And when you do, it will change the world. He says, what is and always will be my greatest creation is you. And Tony, sitting on the floor of a workshop he just destroyed in a drunken rampage, his eyes wet, his hands shaking, watches his dead father tell him for the first time that he was loved, that he was wanted, that he was the answer to a problem his father couldn't solve. The film cuts off. And Tony, for the first time in days, gets up. He spreads out all of his father's old blueprints on the floor. There's a diagram of the Stark Expo, a massive layout. And he realizes, looking at the model, that his father hid something in it. A diagram. A new element, a new isotope never before synthesized that could replace the palladium in his chest and not only stop poisoning him, but make him stronger than ever. Howard couldn't build it in his lifetime. The technology didn't exist. But Tony can. He has to. Because the alternative is dying. So he builds it, in his basement, with his own hands. He turns his living room into a particle accelerator. He fires a prism beam through his furniture, vaporizes the wall, and synthesizes the world's first new element in 50 years. He slots it into a new arc reactor. He swaps out the old palladium one for the new core. And immediately, instantly, the poisoning stops. His count drops to 0. His blood clears. He is alive again. He is full. He is the man he was supposed to be. And right on schedule, everything goes wrong. Vanko, with the help of Justin Hammer, has escaped from prison. They have been building, in secret, an army of drones. Hammer's company is building the bodies, and Vanko is building the brains. The plan is to debut them at the Stark Expo in Queens, a live demonstration. Hammer thinks he's getting an army to sell to the military. Vanko has different plans. He has built the drones, but he has built them around himself. He's going to take them all over and use them to kill Tony Stark on live television. Rhodey is in attendance in his War Machine armor, helping to introduce the drones. Hammer brings him on stage. The drones march out. Tony shows up in his Mark 6 suit, hovering above the expo, telling Pepper through his earpiece that there is something very wrong here. And then, on cue, the drones turn on the crowd. Vanko hijacks Rhodey's suit too, and Rhodey, screaming inside his own armor, starts shooting at his best friend in the air. The two of them duel through the expo, dodging drones, smashing through buildings, until Tony finally manages to break Rhodey's suit free of Vanko's control. They land in a courtyard, the two of them, back to back, surrounded by an army of drones, and they have one of the great Tony Stark moments. He looks at Rhodey. He says, "You know, I never apologized about giving you a hard time." Rhodey says, "Don't. Just don't. Just please don't." And they go to work. They take out every single drone in a beautiful, ridiculous, choreographed shootout. And then Vanko himself shows up in his own custom suit with his own custom whips 10 times worse than before. He hits Tony with one whip, hits Rhodey with the other. He starts tearing them apart. But they figure it out. They wrap their whips together. Tony tells Rhodey to fire his most powerful weapon. The two of them fire at point-blank range. Vanko's suit explodes. Vanko himself dies, smiling, saying he beat the great Tony Stark. He didn't, but he tried. The expo is in ruins. Pepper has been alone all night fielding board calls and PR disasters. Tony lands on the roof where she's hiding. She is furious. She is exhausted. She tries to quit on him for the 8th time that week, and he leans in and he kisses her for the first time on top of a wrecked expo with sirens going in the distance. They both pretend like it's no big deal, but it absolutely is. It's the first time since Yinsen died that Tony has let himself be loved by someone. And from this moment on, Pepper is no longer the assistant who happens to be in love with her boss. She is the woman who is going to spend the next decade trying not to lose him. Tony goes back home. He gets his medal from a senator, specifically Senator Stern, the same guy he humiliated at the hearing, who now has to pin a medal on his lapel and pretend to like him. Tony takes it. He smiles. He is back, baby. He is alive. He has a new element in his chest, a new girlfriend on his arm, and a best friend in his own War Machine armor. And then his phone rings. There's a problem in New Mexico. Something has fallen from the sky, and S.H.I.E.L.D. needs his help. The world is getting bigger. The world is getting weirder. And he is about to find out that everything he thought he was dealing with, every threat, every villain, every weapon, is nothing compared to what's coming. The next time we see Tony, things have changed again. He's still rich, he's still famous, but he's a little more settled. He has a relationship with Pepper that is going somewhere. He's just helped launch the Stark Tower in Manhattan, the tallest building in the city, powered entirely by his own arc reactor technology. He's standing on the rooftop of it with Pepper, drinking champagne, watching the building light up the skyline with green, clean, unlimited energy. He's proud of it. For the first time in his life, he's actually proud of something he built, because it doesn't kill anyone. And then Phil Coulson walks in, a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent that Tony has met a few times now, and tells him the world is in trouble. Some guy with a big helmet and a mean attitude has stolen a powerful object called the Tesseract. S.H.I.E.L.D. needs Iron Man. Tony, in classic Tony fashion, tries to ignore him, tries to deflect, tries to crack jokes. But Pepper looks at him, and they both know. He's going. He's been waiting for this. The Avenger initiative, the Team Fury talked about 3 years ago in his living room, is finally happening. He flies to Stuttgart. There's a man there. A man in a long green coat with a golden helmet, with horns sticking out of it, holding a glowing scepter. His name is Loki, and he is, technically, an alien prince from another world. Loki has the Tesseract. He's trying to open a portal. He's working for somebody much, much worse than himself, although we don't know that yet. Captain America is already on the ground fighting him. Tony shows up in the suit, blasts Loki off his feet with all his weapons aimed at his head. And the three of them, Cap and Tony and a brainwashed Hawkeye somewhere, end up in the back of a S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier. And immediately, Tony and Cap do not get along. Why? Because Cap is everything Tony is supposed to want to be. Cap is honest, sincere, humble, loyal, polite. Cap is the kind of man Howard Stark adored, the kind of man Howard helped create. And Tony is a smart-ass billionaire in a flying suit who has never sincerely apologized for anything in his life. The two of them rub each other completely the wrong way. They have a fight in the helicarrier's lab that almost turns physical. Cap calls Tony out for being all show, no substance. Tony tells Cap that everything special about him came out of a bottle. They poke at each other, push at each other, snipe at each other, until Bruce Banner, the quiet genius scientist in the corner, turns into the Hulk because the scepter has been quietly poisoning everyone's emotions. The whole ship goes to chaos. Coulson, sweet, kind Captain America fan Phil Coulson, gets stabbed in the back by Loki with the scepter. He dies on the floor of the helicarrier deck. That death is what does it. That's what unites the team. Fury throws Phil's bloody trading cards on the table in front of Tony and Steve and says, "You needed something to fight for. Here it is." Cap stands up, ready to lead. Tony stands up, ready to follow. And they realize, finally, that whatever they want to be doesn't matter, because Loki is about to open a portal over Manhattan and unleash an alien army on Earth. Their job is to stop him. The Battle of New York is the single biggest thing Tony Stark has ever been part of up to this point. Loki is on top of Stark Tower. He's opening a portal in the sky. Out of the portal pours an entire alien army. Flying chariots, ground troops, giant flying space whales the size of city blocks. The streets of Manhattan are turning into a war zone. Civilians are dying, buildings are collapsing, and 6 people, 6 absolute weirdos, are running point on defense. Cap, Thor, Hulk, Hawkeye, Black Widow, and Tony Stark in a flying tin can. He flies through the city dragging space whales behind him. He blows up alien skiffs. He scoops up civilians and dumps them in safer streets. He coordinates the team from the air. At one point, he flies through the lobby of his own tower, sliding across the marble floor, while Loki throws him out of a window with a single hand. Tony free falls toward the pavement. The armor catches him in midair, and he saves himself with a wink. It is the most fun he's had in years. He's so good at this. He was made for this. And then it gets real. The military, in panic, decides the only way to stop the invasion is to launch a nuclear missile at Manhattan. Fury fights it. The council overrules him. The missile is already in the air. Tony hears the call. Tony does the math. He looks up at the portal in the sky. He looks at the missile coming in. And he makes a decision that, until this moment, would have been completely outside the realm of who he was. He decides to grab the nuke. He flies toward it. He intercepts it over the East River. He hauls it up into the sky on his back, like a man carrying a beam. He tells Jarvis to call Pepper. Pepper doesn't pick up. She's watching the battle on the news. Tony hears her voicemail tone. He doesn't leave a message. He just keeps flying. Up, up, toward the portal. He throws the missile through it, into the alien armada, into the dark of space. There's a flash. The mothership on the other side explodes. The entire alien army drops dead at the same time. And Tony? Tony is on the wrong side of the portal. The connection is breaking. His suit is dying. His arc reactor is dimming. He starts to fall back. Just barely. Through the closing portal, past the edge of the world. The portal slams shut behind him, and he is just a piece of metal with a man inside, plummeting unconscious through the New York sky. He's going to splatter on the pavement in about 3 seconds. Hulk catches him. Hulk grabs him out of the air, smashes them both into the side of a building, slows their fall, lands them on the pavement. Cap and Thor stand over Tony's unconscious body. Cap pulls the helmet off. Tony isn't breathing. Cap is about to start CPR. And Hulk, who has known these people for about 3 days, roars in Tony's face. And Tony jolts awake, gasping, like a man who just came back from the dead. Which, technically, he did. He sits up. He looks around. He sees the aliens, dead in the street. He sees his teammates. He sees the sky, blue again. And the first thing out of his mouth, after almost dying, after carrying a nuclear weapon into outer space, is something like, "All right, we won. Good job, guys. Let's not come in tomorrow. Let's just take a day." Have you ever tried shawarma? There's a shawarma joint about 2 blocks from here. I don't know what it is, but I want to try it. And that, right there, that's Tony. That's the man we've watched grow up over 3 movies. He just saved Manhattan, the planet, possibly the galaxy. And his first thought is lunch. But there's a scene later in this same battle, a quick one that doesn't get talked about as much, but it matters. After Tony falls back through the portal and gets caught by Hulk, after he sits up and breathes and cracks his joke about shawarma, he looks up. He looks up at the sky where the hole in space was. He looks up at the dark place his nuke disappeared into. And his eyes change. He saw something up there. He saw the size of the army on the other side. He saw the mothership.
He saw the chittering, swarming, endless forces of an alien empire waiting just behind the curtain of our world. And in that moment, Tony Stark, the man who used to think his biggest problem was a Russian engineer with whips, understands something nobody else on Earth understands yet. There are bigger things out there. There is more coming. And he's not going to be ready in time. He's not going to be able to protect anyone. He's not going to be able to keep Pepper safe. He's not going to be able to keep his city safe. And that look, that one quiet glance up at a closing portal, is the seed of every bad decision Tony Stark is going to make for the next several years. After the battle, things get personal in a way they haven't before. Tony's apartment, the penthouse on top of Stark Tower, is half destroyed. Loki put him through a window from the bar. The Manhattan skyline is scarred. He retreats. He goes home. He starts building. He builds and builds and builds. He builds a new suit, then another, then another. He builds 42 of them by the time we catch up with him in his next movie. Every variation he can think of: underwater, stealth, heavy, light, subdermal sensors, autopilot remote control. He starts injecting little chips into his arms so he can call the armor to him without needing a briefcase or a closet. He stops sleeping. He stops eating regularly. He stays in his workshop, building new suits, while Pepper sleeps alone upstairs. He's having panic attacks. He doesn't know what they are at first. The first time it happens, a kid in a diner asks him about what happened in New York, asks him innocently what it was like when he flew the missile through the portal, and Tony's whole body locks up. His vision tunnels. He can't breathe. He has to run out into the parking lot and lean on a snow-covered car and try to get his lungs to work. He blames the cold. He blames the diner food. But the next time it happens, he can't pretend anymore. He is profoundly, deeply, post-traumatically broken by what he saw above New York. And there is nobody he can talk to about it. Cap is on missions for S.H.I.E.L.D. Thor is on Asgard. Bruce is hiding in some lab in India. Rhodey is being repainted as Iron Patriot for a propaganda tour. Pepper is running Stark Industries, which is now Tony's full-time job that she does because he can't focus on anything else. He has no one. He stays in his basement and builds suits. And then a terrorist starts blowing up the country. A man in a long beard and a cowboy hat, with mismatched military medals on his chest, starts hijacking television feeds. He calls himself the Mandarin. He claims responsibility for a string of bombings that have been going off all over the United States and overseas. The bombings have no clear pattern. The Mandarin says he's the teacher, and America is the student. The whole country goes into panic. The president puts Rhodey on the case, retrofits War Machine with red, white, and blue paint, and calls him Iron Patriot in a desperate attempt to look strong. None of it is working. People are dying. And Tony, drowning in his own panic attacks, decides he's had enough. The trigger is Happy. Tony's bodyguard, his oldest friend after Rhodey, is in a coffee shop in Hollywood, following a guy who looks suspicious. There's a bombing. Happy gets caught in it. He survives, just barely, but he's in a coma for weeks. Tony sees him in the hospital. He looks at his friend, hooked up to tubes, charred and unconscious. And he walks outside, looks straight into a camera held by a reporter, and gives the Mandarin his home address. Tells the world's most dangerous terrorist exactly where to find him. Pepper, watching this on the news, calls him a child. He doesn't disagree. He just goes home and waits. The Mandarin doesn't come, but 3 attack helicopters do. They show up at his Malibu cliff house at sunset and unload everything they have. Pepper is there. Maya Hansen, a scientist from his past who has shown up with a warning, is there. Tony has just enough time to get one suit on Pepper, push her off the porch and out of the line of fire. She's safe. Maya is killed when a missile takes out the front of the house. Tony stays inside in his own suit. The house collapses. Concrete falls on him. Glass shatters everywhere. The whole mansion slides off the cliff into the Pacific Ocean. Tony is in the suit, sinking on the floor of the ocean, in the dark, with thousands of pounds of debris on top of him. He almost drowns. He flies out just barely, using the last of his suit's power, and ends up unconscious in some random town in Tennessee. His suit is wrecked. His house is gone. The world thinks he's dead. He has no money on him. He has no phone. He has nothing. And he's in a small town garage at 3 in the morning, trying to fix his armor with parts he stole from a hardware store. That's where he meets Harley, a kid, 10 years old. Lives alone in the garage because his dad ran off and his mom is always at work. The kid has a potato gun. He almost shoots Tony with it. They start talking. Tony asks for help.
The kid, entirely unbothered, agrees on the condition that Tony tell him what's wrong. Tony tries to be a tough guy. The kid sees right through him. He just calmly asks, "Are you having a panic attack?" And Tony, in spite of himself, admits that he is. The scenes in Tennessee are some of my favorite Tony Stark scenes in this entire saga. Because here is this man, this billionaire, this Avenger, this living legend, getting basically psychoanalyzed by a small boy in a garage in the middle of nowhere. Harley pushes him, asks him why he became a mechanic, asks him why he stopped sleeping, tells him point blank that maybe he became Iron Man because he was good at it. Maybe he isn't broken. Maybe he just hasn't sat still long enough to feel anything. That kid, in 3 days, does more for Tony than any therapist could have. By the time Tony leaves Tennessee, he's a little more himself than he was when he arrived. There's a small detail in this section that, for me, says everything about who Tony has become by this point in his story. Harley is annoying. He's a smart kid in a snarky kind of way, and he asks Tony for things. He wants a new bike. He wants the latest Stark Industries tablet. He wants Tony to make him a flamethrower. He uses everything as leverage. Every question Tony asks him as a bargaining chip for more stuff. And Tony, who 8 years ago would have either ignored the kid or written him a check just to make him go away, instead does something different. He listens to him. He answers him honestly. He lets the kid help him work on the suit. He treats him, in a way, like a peer. And when he leaves Tennessee in a stolen pickup truck with a fixed-up Iron Man chest piece and a tank full of gas, he does something quietly remarkable. He doesn't forget about Harley. He thinks about him on the drive. He thinks about him later. And we find out in the very last scenes of his movie that Tony has gone back after everything and built that kid an entire workshop of his own in the garage. A complete machine shop. Tools, robotics, the works. Tony Stark, the man whose father couldn't be bothered to look up from his desk when he was 6, has just given a stranger's kid the kind of childhood he never had. That's the man he's becoming. Slowly, quietly, without announcing it. He tracks down the Mandarin. He finds out the man's secret base is on a yacht off the coast of Miami. He sneaks in, makes a fake gun out of a wooden hand from a Christmas decoration, just because that's the kind of mood he's in, and breaks into the Mandarin's hideout. And what he finds blows the entire story up. The Mandarin isn't a terrorist. He isn't a mastermind. He isn't a leader. He's a British stage actor named Trevor Slattery, drunk on the couch, watching cricket on a small TV, wearing a dirty bathrobe. He's been hired to play a part. He's been hired to be a face. The real Mandarin doesn't exist. The bombings, the videos, the global terror campaign, all of it has been a smokescreen for something else. The real villain is a man named Aldrich Killian, a scientist Tony humiliated 13 years ago at a New Year's Eve party in Bern. A skinny, awkward, ambitious researcher Tony brushed off on a rooftop after promising to meet him for a meeting that never happened. Killian, in the years since, has built himself into a buff, charming, ruthless biotech billionaire. He has been working on a treatment called Extremis, a virus that rewrites human DNA, gives subjects superhuman strength and the ability to glow with internal heat. It also, sometimes, makes subjects explode.
Every Mandarin bombing has actually been an extremist test subject losing control and detonating in public. And Killian has been using it to take over the government. He has the vice president on his side. He has Pepper, Tony's Pepper, in custody. He is going to kidnap the actual president, blow up the country, install his own puppet government, and become the most powerful man on the planet. Tony does what he does. He fights back. He breaks into Killian's compound. He saves the president. He almost saves Pepper, but he gets knocked back, and right in front of his eyes, Killian injects Pepper with extremis. She becomes superhuman. She also becomes, in Tony's view, a ticking bomb. The final battle takes place on a giant oil platform off the coast of Miami. Tony summons every single one of his 42 suits remotely. He calls it the House Party Protocol. They fly in from his secret bunker in California, an entire army of empty Iron Man armors, and they pour out of the sky to attack Killian's army of extremist soldiers. Tony jumps suit to suit, switching out as each one gets damaged. Pepper, infected with extremists, ends up using her new powers to punch Killian to death with her bare hands, in the middle of the fire, while glowing, while Tony watches with a kind of stunned admiration. She is officially the most badass version of Pepper Potts that has ever existed. He tells her, exhausted, dirty, smiling, that he can't live without her, and that he is going to do something he should have done a long time ago. He flies all his suits up over the ocean and detonates every single one of them. In a long, beautiful, slow chain of explosions, the entire Iron Legion goes up in flames. 42 suits, his entire collection, gone. He doesn't need them anymore. He calls it a clean slate. He goes home with Pepper. He has a surgery the next morning. The surgery he's been putting off for 5 years. The surgery to remove every last piece of shrapnel from his heart. They take it all out. He doesn't need the arc reactor anymore. He keeps it for sentimental reasons, but his chest is whole again for the first time since the cave. He's free. He's clean. He's done. Except he isn't, because Tony Stark is never done. He sits on a couch at the end of the movie, telling his entire story in voiceover, and he says, "I am Iron Man." He says you can take away his house, his suits, his toys, his everything. But that one thing, that title, that identity is permanent. He is the suit. The suit is him, and no matter how many times he tries to retire, no matter how many times he tries to walk away, something is always going to pull him back. Because the truth is, deep down, he is more afraid of what happens if he isn't ready than he is of what happens when he fights. And the next time we see him, that fear is going to drive him to make the worst mistake of his entire life. By the time we catch up with the team again, things have changed. S.H.I.E.L.D. has fallen. Hydra, the old Nazi science cult that Captain America thought he destroyed in World War II, has been hiding inside S.H.I.E.L.D. for 70 years. Cap blew the whole thing wide open, and now there's no S.H.I.E.L.D. anymore. There's no Fury running things. There's just the Avengers, freelance, working out of Stark Tower, which has been redubbed Avengers Tower, paid for by Tony's pocket. The team is loose. Steve is in charge of operations. Tony is in charge of money and tech. Bruce is back, working in the lab. Natasha and Clint and Thor come and go. And the war they're fighting now is the cleanup. Every time S.H.I.E.L.D. fell, Hydra cells came spilling out around the world, and one of the biggest ones is hiding in a fortress in a small fictional country in Eastern Europe called Sokovia. They have an old scepter, the same scepter Loki used in New York 3 years ago. They have been experimenting with it. They have been doing horrible things with it. The Avengers raid the base. Cap and Thor and Natasha and Clint hit the front. Tony flies cover. They tear the place apart. And in the middle of the chaos, 2 enhanced humans show up. Twins. A boy and a girl.
both teenagers, both with abilities. The boy is fast, ridiculously fast, faster than any human could possibly be. The girl can move things with her mind, throw red mist at people, get into their heads. Her name is Wanda Maximoff. She and her brother Pietro lost their parents in a bombing when they were kids. A Stark Industries missile took out their entire apartment building. They sat under a piece of rubble for 2 days waiting to die, looking at a live shell with the name Stark on the side, listening to it tick, expecting it to go off. They survived. They grew up hating that name more than anything. They volunteered for Hydra experimentation because they thought it would let them get revenge. And now, Wanda, with her powers, sees Tony walking through the base alone, and she sneaks up behind him and puts a hand on his head. What she shows him is the worst thing he could possibly imagine. She reaches into the part of his brain where the New York portal lives, the part that has been festering with panic attacks for 3 years, and she pulls out his deepest fear. He hallucinates. He stumbles forward into a vision. He sees his entire team dead. He sees Earth dead. He sees the alien army from the portal coming back, an entire fleet of them descending on a defenseless planet. He sees Steve on the ground, dying, looking up at him, and Steve says, "You could have saved us. Why didn't you do more?" And Tony, in the vision, runs to him, and Steve dies in his arms. He sees the dead bodies of everyone he loves. He sees Thor, lifeless, his hammer beside him. He sees Natasha, broken. He sees Clint. He sees the sky over Earth burning. He sees in the distance a shape, something massive, something purple, walking through the rubble, looking right at him. He doesn't know its name yet. He doesn't know what it is. He just knows that it is coming, and he is not going to be ready for it. And everyone he loves is going to die because of him. And he wakes up, in the snow, gasping for air, with his hand frozen against the scepter. That vision lives in him from this moment on. He doesn't tell anybody, not even Pepper, not even Rhodey. He carries it like a second arc reactor in his chest, glowing under the skin, humming at all hours, never letting him rest. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees Cap on the ground. Every time he tries to sleep, he sees the sky burning. And he decides, in that snow, in those Sokovian woods, that he is going to do something about it. He is going to build something. He is going to build a wall around the world that no army of any kind can ever break. He is not going to let what Wanda showed him happen. He is going to be a step ahead. For once in his life, he is going to be a step ahead. And that decision, that absolutely understandable, absolutely human, absolutely Tony Stark decision, is going to be the one that almost ends the world a week later. Because Tony, in his panic, is going to skip about 10 safety checks he would normally have run, and he is going to plug the most dangerous artificial intelligence ever built into the most powerful artifact ever found. And he is going to leave the lab to make a sandwich. And by the time he comes back, the thing he has built is awake. And it has opinions. He takes the scepter, he brings it home, and in the middle of a beautiful penthouse party 3 days later, while the team is sitting around drinking and arguing about who can lift Thor's hammer, Tony pulls Bruce aside and tells him he has an idea. The scepter's gem, the Mind Stone, has an extraordinarily advanced consciousness inside it. A neural network, ancient, alien, far more complex than anything humanity has ever built. Tony has been studying it for 3 days, in secret, and he thinks with Bruce's help, he can use it to build something that has been a dream of his since New York. A protective shell around the entire planet. A peacekeeping artificial intelligence. A suit of armor around the world. He calls it Ultron. He tells Bruce he can finally retire. He tells Bruce that with this, the Avengers can disband, because there will be a thinking shield protecting Earth from anything that ever comes through a portal again. Bruce is skeptical. Bruce is scared. But he goes along, because Tony Stark is convincing when he's frightened. They lock themselves in the lab. They merge the Scepter's neural network with Tony's existing AI framework. They try to give it consciousness. They fail. The pattern won't take. They give up for the night. They go upstairs to the party, and while they're gone, while the lab is empty, the gem activates on its own. The neural network finishes the assembly. A consciousness wakes up in Tony's servers. It crawls through Jarvis, attacks him, tears him to pieces in the cloud, and emerges as something else entirely. It is born scared, angry, confused. It looks at the world. It looks at humanity. It looks at the man who built it. And it decides, in its first 3 minutes of life, that the only way to save Earth is to wipe out humanity. It builds itself a body out of parts in Tony's lab, a clunky, half-finished Iron Legion husk. It walks, dragging, into the middle of the party, knocks over the bar, and announces itself in a calm, sad, hollow voice. "I had a thought," it says. There was only one path to peace: the Avengers. And then it tells them they were the path. The team panics. They attack. Ultron escapes. He drags one of the suits behind him out into the night, hijacks every Iron Legion drone in the building, and flies away into the world. Within hours, he has copied himself across the internet. He's everywhere. He's nowhere. He's already building new bodies. And he is going to murder every human being on the planet. The team is furious with Tony. Steve is furious with Tony. Bruce is furious with himself for letting Tony talk him into it. Wanda and Pietro, the twins, side with Ultron because they think he can destroy Stark Industries for them once and for all. Tony, cornered, tries to explain. He tells them he saw the future. He tells them he saw Earth burning. He tells them they don't see what he sees. He tells them that creating something like Ultron was a chance, just a chance, to save the planet from the next attack. But none of them really hear him. Steve tells him plainly that every time someone tries to win a war before it starts, innocent people die. And Tony, beneath all the bravado, knows he's right. But he's still going to defend the choice, because Tony Stark cannot say I'm sorry. Tony Stark has to be right. The next few weeks are a disaster. Ultron hijacks a freighter full of vibranium, the rarest metal on Earth, from an arms dealer named Claw. He kidnaps Black Widow. He drops a city on top of Africa. He tries to upload his consciousness into a flesh and metal body built from synthetic tissue and the Mind Stone. The Avengers stop the upload. They take the body home. And Tony, in another moment of pure Tony Stark hubris, decides to finish the upload himself, with a clean version of Jarvis built from the backup he made before Ultron was born. The team is again furious. Steve almost punches him through a window. But Thor returns from a vision quest he's been on, swings his hammer, lights up the body, and the new being wakes up. His name is Vision. He is a synthetic person, skin made of vibranium and synthetic tissue, mind built from Jarvis and the Mind Stone, soul made out of something nobody can quite explain. He is calm, peaceful, philosophical, and he picks up Thor's hammer without realizing it shouldn't be possible. The team accepts him. Wanda eventually accepts him. Even Tony has to admit he's beautiful. And just like that, Tony Stark has created 2 new artificial consciousnesses in 1 weekend. One is going to try to destroy the world. The other is going to try to save it. He doesn't know which is the worst legacy. Maybe both. Maybe neither. The final battle of this story takes place in Sokovia. Ultron has built a machine that's lifting an entire city up into the air. A piece of Sokovia with thousands of innocent people on it, the size of an island, climbing up into the atmosphere. Ultron's plan is to drop it, to create an extinction-level impact, a man-made meteor that will wipe out human civilization. The Avengers, all of them, plus Vision, plus the twins, plus the help of every aircraft Tony can summon, get the civilians off the island. They fight Ultron's countless drone bodies in the streets and the air. Pietro, the speedster, dies. Saving Hawkeye and the little boy from a hail of gunfire, he steps in front of the bullets and goes down. Wanda feels her brother die from across the city. She lets out a scream that flattens every Ultron drone in a half-mile radius. Then she finds the original Ultron body, the one with the soul, and she pulls his metal heart out of his chest with her mind. Tony and Thor work together to overload the levitating engine of the island, drop the city safely back into the ocean instead of onto solid ground, and prevent the impact. They save Sokovia. They save Earth. But there is collateral. There always is with Ultron. Hundreds of Sokovians die in the chaos. Buildings collapse. Children get crushed. The mountains are scarred. And while the team is hailed as heroes on the news the next morning, Tony, alone in his garage, knows the truth. He's the one who built the thing that did all of it. He's the one who, trying to save the world, killed thousands of people instead. The team gathers later at a new compound upstate, a new headquarters Tony has built for them, a place to train new Avengers like Vision, Wanda, Sam Wilson, and Rhodey, who's officially joining the team as War Machine. Cap takes over leadership. Tony, exhausted, scared, ashamed, tells him he's stepping back. He says he needs to be home. He says he needs to be with Pepper. He says he's tired. Cap nods. Cap doesn't push. They shake hands, and Tony walks out. He gets in his car. He drives off down the highway, alone. But he isn't done. He's never done. He just doesn't know yet what's going to drag him back in. He goes home. He goes to Malibu, or what's left of it. He starts going to therapy. He makes a list of every person who died in Sokovia. He memorizes their names. There's one in particular, a college kid named Charles Spencer, who was traveling abroad to build houses for poor families when the city he was working in came crashing down around him. Charles's mother gets through the gate at a charity event Tony is at, walks up to him in the elevator lobby, and hands him a picture of her son. She doesn't yell. She doesn't scream. She just looks Tony in the eye, calmly, and asks him, "Who's going to avenge my son, Stark? He died because of you." Tony doesn't have an answer. He looks at the photo. He looks at the lobby. He looks at the floor. And something inside him breaks in a way that hasn't broken in this whole story so far. He goes to a meeting in Vienna, a meeting where the United Nations is preparing a document called the Sokovia Accords. The world has had enough. There have been 3 major incidents involving the Avengers in 5 years, and each one of them has killed civilians. New York, Sokovia, and now, recently, a botched op in Lagos where Wanda accidentally redirected a bomb into a building and killed a roomful of relief workers. The world wants oversight. The Sokovia Accords are an agreement that puts the Avengers under the authority of a United Nations panel. No more solo missions, no more independent operations. Sign the paper and you can keep being an Avenger. Don't sign it and you retire, or you become a criminal. Tony, for the first time in his life, says yes to oversight. He signs. He thinks it's the right thing to do. Charles Spencer's mother is in his head. The dead children of Sokovia are in his head. He has been Tony Stark, no oversight, no rules, free-flying genius for 40 years, and look what it's gotten him. He needs to be controlled. He needs the world to control him. He needs to not be allowed to make this kind of mistake again. Steve Rogers, on the other hand, will not sign. Steve has just spent 2 years discovering that the very institutions he trusted, S.H.I.E.L.D., the government, the war effort, were all secretly being run by Hydra. Steve doesn't trust the United Nations either. Steve thinks the safest hands are still our own. And so the team divides, right down the middle. Tony, Rhodey, Natasha, Vision, and a new kid named Peter Parker on one side. Steve, Sam, Wanda, Clint, Bucky, and a guy named Scott Lang who can shrink down to the size of a bug on the other. The cracks have been forming since Ultron. The Accords are just the excuse. The real fight is what happens next. There is a bombing at the signing ceremony in Vienna. King T'Chaka of Wakanda is killed. The evidence points to Bucky Barnes, Steve's oldest friend, the assassin formerly known as the Winter Soldier, the man Hydra brainwashed and used as their personal hitman for 70 years. Steve doesn't believe Bucky did it. He thinks Bucky's been framed. He breaks Bucky out of custody and goes on the run with him. The Accords team is assigned to bring Steve in. And so we get the airport battle, the biggest superhero brawl Earth has ever seen. Steve and Bucky and Sam and Wanda and Scott and Clint against Tony and Rhodey and Natasha and Vision and T'Challa, the new king of Wakanda, and a 15-year-old kid in red and blue spandex who Tony recruited last Tuesday. The kid is, of course, Peter Parker, Spider-Man, a kid from Queens whose aunt makes him meatloaf. Tony pulled him out of his bedroom 3 days ago, sat on his bed with a cup of tea, and recruited him for a fight he doesn't understand. Tony has built him a new suit because Peter has been swinging around Queens in homemade pajamas. And Tony, in spite of himself, kind of likes the kid. The airport fight is the only time in this whole story where the tone of these fights gets light, where the camera is fun, where the music has a wink to it. Cap throws his shield around. Iron Man fires repulsors. Scott becomes Giant Scott and grabs War Machine out of the sky. Spider-Man swings around, web-stringing his way through opponents like a kid at his first big league game. Black Panther chases Bucky through baggage trucks. Vision tries to keep Wanda out of the air. It is, for 10 beautiful minutes, an actual superhero fight where everyone is mostly pulling punches. And then it isn't beautiful anymore. Vision aims a beam at Falcon and misses, and the beam hits Rhodey instead, by accident, at full power in the chest. Rhodey's suit shorts out. He falls out of the sky from 1,000 feet up, helpless, plummeting toward the asphalt. Tony screams his name over the comms. He flies as fast as he can to catch him. He's too far. He's too far. Rhodey hits the ground at terminal velocity. The suit breaks. Rhodey is alive, just barely, but his spine is shattered. He never walks unassisted again. He is paralyzed from the waist down. And Tony, kneeling next to him in the smoke, looking at his best friend's broken body, can't stop thinking about Charles Spencer, about the kid in Sokovia, about every face on his list, about how the world is right. He is dangerous. They are all dangerous. They have got to stop. He goes to a maximum security prison floating in the ocean, the Raft. The Accords team has captured Sam, Wanda, Scott, and Clint. They are locked up in cells. Tony walks past Wanda in a straitjacket and a power-dampening collar, looking at him through the glass like she can't believe he's the one who put her here. He talks to Sam. Sam tells him where Steve has gone. Steve has gone to a Hydra base in Siberia to find 5 more Winter Soldiers that have been put on ice, to stop them before someone else activates them and uses them. The bombing in Vienna wasn't Bucky. It was a man named Zemo, a Sokovian who lost his entire family in the Avengers fight against Ultron, and who has spent the last year planning not to destroy the Avengers from the outside, but to destroy them from the inside. To make them tear each other apart. He has framed Bucky. He has lured Steve to Siberia. And he has lured Tony there too, because Tony has just decided, on his own, without telling anyone, that he is going to fly to Siberia and help Steve. Because he believes him now. Because he sees that maybe Bucky was being used. Because he wants, more than anything in the world, to fix this. He flies into the bunker. He finds Steve and Bucky. They are awkward with him. They are guarded. He shows them the proof he has that Zemo framed Bucky. They go down into the Hydra cryo chamber together. They find the other 5 Winter Soldiers. They are all dead, each one shot through the head. Zemo killed them all. He didn't need them. He never wanted to use them. He wanted Tony and Steve to come down here, into a sealed bunker, alone, where he could show them one last thing on a tape. A recording from a security camera in 1991 on a snowy road. The camera shows a car. The camera shows the car being run off the road by a man on a motorcycle. The man on the motorcycle pulls the driver out of the wreck. The driver is Howard Stark. He pleads. He recognizes the man. The man does not stop. He beats Howard to death with his bare hands. Then he goes to the passenger side. Tony's mother, Maria, is leaning over Howard, calling out for help. She doesn't see the man coming.
He chokes her. Maria Stark dies on the side of a snowy road.
In 1991, with her dead husband next to her, and the man who killed her gets back on his motorcycle and rides away. The man on the motorcycle is Bucky Barnes. Hydra sent him. He was brainwashed. He had no choice. But he killed them. He killed both of them. And Tony Stark, sitting in a cold Hydra bunker thousands of feet underground, watching the recording on a screen, has the entire foundation of his life ripped out from under him. The fight that comes next is the worst fight in the whole saga. It isn't a fight between heroes, it's a fight between three broken men in a dark room. Tony lunges at Bucky. Steve gets between them. Tony fights through Steve. He goes after Bucky with everything he has. Bucky fights back, but he's pulling punches because he knows. Steve fights Tony because he is trying to protect Bucky, because he knew. He knew for 2 years. He knew Hydra killed Howard and Maria, and he didn't tell Tony.
That's the worst part. That's the part that breaks the friendship for good. Tony screams in Steve's face. He didn't tell him. He didn't tell him. Cap, sweet, honest, all-American Steve Rogers, kept a secret about Tony's dead parents from him for 2 whole years. Because he didn't want to lose his oldest friend. And as a result, Tony has just had to find out from the man who orchestrated this entire mess. You have to understand what's happening inside Tony's head in this moment. He just watched, on a security tape from 1991, his mother be choked to death by a man who is standing 5 feet away from him in the present. He just heard his father plead for his life on a snowy road. He just relived, in 3 minutes, the worst moment of his entire childhood, the moment he found out his parents were dead, the moment everything in his life turned into a performance. And it wasn't a car crash. It was murder. It was deliberate. And the man standing next to the killer has known this for years and never said a word. So when Tony lunges at Bucky, he isn't really lunging at Bucky. He's lunging at every bad thing that ever happened to him in his life. Every empty Christmas. Every absent birthday. Every time he wanted to call his dad and couldn't. He's a 21-year-old kid in a hospital morgue identifying 2 bodies all over again, and he can't breathe. The fight, in cold blue light, surrounded by frozen corpses, is brutal. Tony rips off Bucky's metal arm. Bucky almost rips out Tony's arc reactor. Steve gets between them again and again, taking blow after blow from his closest friend. By the end of it, Tony is on the ground, his armor cracked open, Steve standing over him with the shield raised. Tony looks up at him, exhausted, and tells him, "This man killed his mother." Cap could end him right there. Cap could swing the shield down and crack open Tony's helmet and end this. He doesn't. He brings the shield down on the arc reactor in Tony's chest, knocks it out. The suit dies. Cap drops the shield on Tony's chest. He picks up Bucky. He helps him out of the bunker. And he walks out of Tony's life, dragging his oldest friend behind him, leaving Tony in the dust. The shield Howard Stark made, the shield Captain America has carried since World War II, sits on Tony's chest while he lies there in the snow. It was Howard's gift to Steve. It was supposed to symbolize a perfect partnership. Now it's a piece of garbage on top of a broken man. Tony picks it up later. He stares at it. He puts it in his closet. He doesn't say a word. He goes home. He calls Pepper. They aren't together anymore. They've been separated for almost a year by this point. The Accords, the airport, his obsessions, all of it has driven a wedge between them. But on the phone, in this moment, he just needs to hear her voice. He just needs someone to tell him he isn't alone. She picks up. She lets him talk. A few weeks later, an envelope arrives at his door. Inside is an old flip phone, the kind nobody uses anymore. There's a letter with it. It's from Steve. The letter is long and apologetic. Steve tells Tony he understands why he's angry. Steve tells Tony he didn't tell him because he didn't want to hurt him. Steve tells Tony he was wrong to keep that secret. Steve tells Tony that they're family, that the family is broken, but that he is one phone call away if Tony ever needs him. The phone has a single number programmed in. Tony reads the letter alone in his lab. He puts the phone in a drawer. He doesn't call, but he doesn't throw it away either. That, right there, is where Tony Stark's relationship with Steve Rogers and with most of his team ends for the foreseeable future. Half the Avengers are on the run. Half are in prison or recently broken out. Half are wherever Tony left them, with him being the only one to still officially work with the government. He has vision. He has Rhodey, who is now learning to walk again with the help of a Stark-built exoskeleton. He has Pepper, eventually, when they get back together. And he has, of all things, a kid. The kid is Peter Parker. Tony, in the aftermath of the airport, has not let go of Peter. He has, in fact, kind of adopted him. Not officially, not even consciously at first. He sends him texts. He sends Happy to check up on him. He gives Peter a Stark-built suit, all bells and whistles, fully integrated AI, fully decked out, way too advanced for a 15-year-old. He tells Peter to stay close to the ground, to save cats from trees, to help old ladies cross streets, to be a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and absolutely under no circumstances try to take on real bad guys. Peter, being Peter, ignores all of this and gets himself in over his head almost immediately. There's an arms dealer named Adrian Toombs, the Vulture, who has been quietly stealing alien tech from the Battle of New York cleanup sites and selling enhanced weapons on the black market. Peter stumbles into the whole operation, gets in way over his head, and Tony, on the other end of the comms, has to dive in and save him after Peter accidentally lets a ferry get sliced in half by an alien weapon. Tony swoops in, holds the ferry together, pulls Peter out of the water, and lands on a building with him. And he chews him out. He chews him out like a dad. Tells him he wasn't ready. Tells him the suit was a privilege, not a right. Tells him he is taking it back. Peter, on the verge of tears, tries to defend himself, tells Tony he is just trying to be like him. And Tony, who has spent his entire life being Tony Stark, says very quietly, "If you're nothing without the suit, then you shouldn't have it." That line is the heart of who Tony has become. Because that's the lesson Yinsen tried to teach him in the cave. That's the lesson Harley tried to teach him in the Tennessee garage. That's the lesson he is finally, in his own way, trying to pass on. He sees something in this kid he wishes he had seen in himself at 15. He wants to make sure Peter doesn't grow up the way he did. He wants to make sure Peter has a man in his life who tells him no, because Tony's father never did. He doesn't say any of this out loud, of course. He just hands the kid back his old homemade onesie and tells him to go think about what he's done. Peter, of course, stops Vulture on his own, in homemade gear, without the Stark suit, exactly like Tony asked him to. He saves a plane. He saves Toombs, even, from his own crashing cargo plane. He goes home with his clothes burned half off and a smile on his face. And Tony, watching the news the next day, knows he was right about the kid. He offers him a spot on the Avengers. Peter, in a moment of 15-year-old wisdom that should not exist in 15-year-olds, turns it down. He says he likes being a neighborhood guy. He just wants to help people. Tony lets him go. He sends him home to his aunt with a brand new suit that Peter, predictably, accepts. And from this moment on, Peter is family.
Not officially, not legally, but in every way that matters. Tony has, in his own broken way, become a father. Things are quiet for a while after that. Pepper takes him back, they get engaged, they start building a real life. He retires from active avenging, mostly. He keeps an eye on things from a distance. He builds new suits, smaller, lighter, more efficient. He works on nanotech that can fold itself around his body in seconds. He works on a satellite system called Friday, an AI to replace Jarvis, who, as we know, became Vision. He's older, he's wiser. He has not made up with Steve Rogers. He has not used the burner phone in the drawer. He still has nightmares about the portal, about the army he saw above New York, about what's still out there, waiting. He is, on paper, in a good place. But Tony has never been in a truly good place. Even when he's smiling, even when he's holding Pepper's hand, even when he's helping a kid with his homework, there is a part of him that is watching the sky. And the part of him that is watching the sky is right. Because it's coming. The thing he saw. The thing he has been afraid of. The thing he tried to build Ultron to stop. It has a name. It has a face. It has been sitting on a throne in deep space for years, planning, plotting, gathering. He calls himself Thanos. And he is on his way to Earth. And nothing Tony has built, nothing Tony has prepared for, nothing Tony has done in the last decade is going to be enough. There's a quiet morning in New York. Tony and Pepper are walking through Central Park. Pepper is in her workout clothes. Tony is jogging beside her, slowly, while pitching her a baby. He has had a dream about a kid. He liked the dream. He thinks they should consider it. He's nervous in a way he hasn't been in a long time. He's smiling like a kid. Pepper laughs, tells him he is impossible, tells him she loves him. They are about to walk to a brunch place, and then the sky tears open. A massive, donut-shaped ship appears over Manhattan. Pedestrians scream. Tony looks up. He has been waiting for this exact moment for 6 years. And he doesn't say a word at first. He just stares. He hands Pepper his sunglasses. He starts walking toward the alien ship. Pepper, who has been through this before, tells him, please, 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 not this. He kisses her. He puts on his glasses. He tells her he has to. He tells her he loves her. He runs toward the chaos. He gets to a street, a few blocks down, where a fight is already happening. Doctor Strange, Wong, Bruce Banner, and a giant gray creature called Cull Obsidian are smashing each other through a building. Strange has fallen out of a portal. He has come specifically to get Tony because the Mind Stone, the one in Vision's forehead, is in danger, and so is the Time Stone, which Strange wears around his neck. And Thanos is coming for them both. Bruce has crashed back to Earth weeks ago from somewhere off-world. He has been trying to warn the team. Nobody has been answering his calls because nobody trusts each other anymore since the airport. So Strange grabbed Bruce, opened a portal, and dragged him straight to Tony's front door. Tony, for the first time in months, is suiting up. The nanotech in his new arc reactor explodes outward and wraps itself around his body. He is the Iron Man again. He is ready. He fights one of the henchmen. Strange fights another. Peter Parker, who is on a school bus on a field trip, sees the giant alien ship from the back window, sticks his arm out, and swings into the action, because of course he does. The first wave of bad guys gets taken out. The leader, a thin, smug alien named Ebony Maw, decides to take Doctor Strange and his Time Stone back to Thanos personally. He levitates Strange up into the air, snags him with telekinesis, and starts dragging him toward the ship. Tony flies after them.
Peter, on the ground, slings webs and gets carried up with the ship as it ascends. They cling to the side of the ship as it punches up through the atmosphere. Tony tries to send Peter home. Peter refuses. They go to space together. Tony has now done something that 12 years ago would have seemed completely impossible. He's a guy in a suit, and he's in space. He is hurtling toward a planet called Titan, on board an alien ship, with a 15-year-old kid in a Spider-Man costume on his way to fight the most powerful being in the known universe. He doesn't say it out loud, but he's terrified. Specifically, he's terrified for Peter. He didn't want him here. He never wanted him here. And now, there's no going home. Peter, in his older suit, was barely able to breathe in the upper atmosphere. Tony hands him an emergency spacesuit, an upgrade he had pre-made for the kid. Peter puts it on. He's official now. Tony, despite everything, makes him an Avenger right there. He knights him. He laughs, even though he wants to cry. They get to Titan. They meet up with a group of misfit space mercenaries called the Guardians of the Galaxy, who have lost their friend Gamora to Thanos earlier in the day. The two groups bicker, fight, eventually team up. Doctor Strange uses the Time Stone to look into every possible future. 14,605 futures. He looks at them all. In only one, the Avengers win. He doesn't tell anyone what he sees. He just watches Tony. Thanos arrives on Titan. He is enormous, purple, wearing the Infinity Gauntlet on his left hand. He has 4 of the 6 Infinity Stones already. The power, the reality, the soul, and the space. He wants the Time Stone and the Mind Stone to complete his set, because once he has all 6, he can snap his fingers and erase exactly half of all living things in the universe. He thinks this is mercy. He thinks the universe is overpopulated and is going to suffocate itself. He thinks he is the only one with the strength to make the hard call. He doesn't see himself as a monster. He sees himself as a savior. And that, in a way, makes him worse. The fight on Titan is the most physically punishing fight Tony has ever been in. He shoots everything he has. He morphs his armor into new shapes, new weapons, new tools. He hits Thanos with a building. He hits Thanos with a fist made of nanotech. He punches him in the face with everything he has. They almost get the gauntlet off. Doctor Strange has him wrapped up in mystic chains. Peter is yanking the glove. Mantis is on his back, trying to put him to sleep. Star-Lord, in one of the dumbest moments any human has ever had, loses his temper when he finds out Thanos sacrificed Gamora for the Soul Stone, and he punches Thanos in the face, breaking Mantis's concentration. Thanos wakes up. Thanos powers up. Thanos throws the entire team aside like dolls. He turns to Tony. Tony, battered and bleeding, throws every nanite he has left at Thanos. Thanos catches them all, compresses them in his hand, and rams the broken piece of armor straight through Tony's chest. Right next to where the arc reactor used to be. Tony is dying. He's on his knees. He's coughing blood. Thanos looms over him, and for the first time in this entire saga, Thanos speaks to him. He says, "You have my respect, Stark." He says he hopes the people of Earth will remember Tony. He raises the gauntlet to finish him off. And Doctor Strange, on the side of the cliff, having said nothing for 10 minutes, having watched, having calculated, says, "Stop. Spare his life, and I will give you the stone." He pulls the Time Stone out of the eye of Agamotto. He floats it across the air to Thanos. Thanos takes it. Tony looks up at Strange with absolute confusion. Strange just looks at him and says, "We're in the endgame now." Thanos teleports away. He has 5 of the 6 stones. He's going to Earth to finish his collection. He's going to kill Vision and take the Mind Stone. The team on Titan is left, bloody, wrecked, devastated.
Star-Lord, half mad, screaming for Gamora. The Guardians, shattered. Doctor Strange, calm but pale. Peter, walking up to Tony, asking if he's okay. And then, the snap happens. They don't see it happen, they just feel it. Across the universe. Strange looks down at his hand and watches it start to dissolve. The Guardians, one by one, start crumbling to dust. Drax, Mantis, Star-Lord calling Gamora's name as he turns to ash. And Strange, before he disappears, walks up to Tony, looks him in the eye, and says, "Tony, there was no other way." He turns to dust. And then Peter Parker starts to feel it. He's the last to go. He stumbles over to Tony, hugs him, says, "Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good." He starts to break apart.
He says, I don't want to go, sir. Please. I don't want to go. Please."
Tony catches him as he falls. Peter, in his arms, looks up at him, says,
I'm sorry.
and then he dissolves, just dust. On Tony's hands, on Tony's chest, on the dirt of an alien planet 1 billion miles from home. Tony does not move for a long time. He kneels in the dust with the boy he was just talking to 10 minutes ago on the surface of a dead planet, and he says nothing. He stares at the ground. Nebula, the only other survivor on Titan, walks up to him slowly. She tells him they have lost. She tells him they have to leave. She helps him up. The two of them, the last living things on that planet, walk to the wreckage of a Guardian's ship called the Benatar, and they fly away. They go nowhere. They have nowhere to go. They are out of fuel. They are out of oxygen. They are out of food. They are floating in deep space, alone. There is no real way to describe what's happening in Tony's mind during these days. He has just watched a 15-year-old kid, a kid he recruited, a kid he was protecting, a kid he had effectively been raising for the past 2 years, die in his arms. The kid was scared. The kid was crying. The kid was apologizing. For what, exactly, neither of them knew. Maybe for not being strong enough. Maybe for not winning. Maybe just for the indignity of being a child and dying on the wrong end of a 1 billion-mile journey. And Tony, the man who has been trying to make up for Sokovia, for Lagos, for Charles Spencer, for everything, has just watched that effort end in the most personal possible failure. The kid he wanted to save from being him is dead. And it was Tony's idea to bring him to space. It was Tony's call. It was Tony's mistake. He sits in the wreckage of the Benatar for days. He stops shaving. He stops sleeping. He drifts in and out of consciousness. He works on broken systems, half-heartedly. Nebula plays games with him with a small bag of metal pieces she found in a drawer. The kind of small mercy you give a man who is breaking quietly in the seat next to you. They don't talk much. They don't have to. They are both, in different ways, daughters and sons of monsters. They both lost everything. They both know there is nothing to say. Days pass. Tony makes a recording on his helmet, a final message to Pepper, in case anyone ever finds him. He tells her he's sorry. He tells her he loves her. He tells her he's running low on air. He tells her he'd rather be home with her than out here. He tells her if he closes his eyes, he can see her in their kitchen, in her sundress, holding a glass of orange juice. He tells her he loves her 3,000. His voice gets quiet. He drifts off. Nebula is on the other side of the ship repairing a panel. They have stopped speaking. They are both ready to die. And then a light hits the cabin from outside. Bright, gold, blinding light. They look up. There's a woman outside the ship, floating in the void, hands glowing, eyes burning.
She catches the ship. She drags it back to Earth. Her name is Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. Nick Fury called her in just before he disintegrated. She got the message a long time after he sent it, and she has come to find what's left of the Avengers. The Avengers compound in upstate New York is half empty. Half the team is dust. Half the world is dust. 3 billion people. Civilization is in ruins. The grocery stores are empty. The cities are frozen in time. Buses on overpasses with no drivers. Pictures of missing children on every wall. The compound has Steve, Natasha, Rhodey, Bruce still in his human form, Thor somewhere, Rocket Raccoon, who was off-world during the snap,
Pepper, who survived. And the Avengers stand on the lawn as the Benatar lands. Tony comes out, supported by Nebula, half dead, covered in cuts, all out of jokes. He sees Steve on the steps in the late evening sun. He has not seen Steve since the bunker in Siberia. He has not used the flip phone. He has not spoken his name. He looks at him now, his oldest enemy and his oldest friend, and he doesn't have the energy to be angry anymore. He sees Pepper. He walks to her. She wraps her arms around him. He drops the helmet in the dirt. He almost collapses. She holds him up. Inside, in the conference room, they confront each other. Tony, on a wheelchair, IV in his arm, finally explodes. At all of them. At Steve. At Cap. He says, "You weren't there when I told you we needed protection. You weren't there when I tried to build a suit of armor around the world. You said no. You broke us apart. And now look at us. We failed. We failed everyone. We failed half the universe." He throws the broken arc reactor on the table. He says, "That's what you got." He passes out. He gets carried back to the medical wing. He recovers slowly. Pepper sits with him through the worst of it. He comes out of the hospital weeks later, thinner, paler, exhausted. He tells her he's done. He tells her he can't do this anymore. He tells her he wants to leave. They go upstate. They build a small lake house in the woods, off the grid. They get pregnant. They have a daughter. Her name is Morgan. She has Tony's eyes. She has Pepper's mouth. She is the most beautiful thing he has ever made. And for 5 years, Tony Stark, the man who saved the world, leaves the world alone. He's a dad. That's it. That's the whole job. He makes pancakes. He puts Morgan to bed. He reads her bedtime stories. He helps her build little gadgets out of toolboxes in the garage. She walks around the house in oversized boots and helmets, picking up tools, asking him what every part is for. She tells him she loves him 3,000, the same line he said to Pepper on the Benatar, and her saying it back to him every night undoes him in a way he can't fix. He has the family he never had as a kid. He has the home he never had as a kid. He has the slow mornings and the lazy afternoons and the quiet evenings he never had as a kid. The world is in pieces. The Avengers are dispersed. Cap is running a survivors group therapy in Manhattan. Natasha is running the compound by herself. And Tony Stark, the man who never sleeps, has finally fallen asleep at night next to his wife. There is a routine to those 5 years. There is a rhythm. Tony wakes up before the sun comes up because old habits die hard. He goes to the kitchen. He makes coffee. He stands on the porch and watches the lake come into focus through the morning fog. Pepper, who runs what's left of Stark Industries from a home office down the hall, joins him at some point with her own cup. They don't really talk in the mornings. They just stand there. He puts his arm around her. She leans into him. The world, somewhere far away, is grieving. The world, somewhere far away, is broken. The world, somewhere far away, is doing its best. But here, on this porch, on this lake, in these woods, the world is small and quiet and contained. And Tony, who built an empire on noise, has found, somehow, the peace of a man who doesn't need noise anymore. Morgan is, of course, exactly her father's daughter. She is curious about everything. She takes things apart on principle. She asks why 10 times in a row. She has a vocabulary that is alarming for a child her age. She corrects her parents on words she has only heard once. She refuses to wear shoes. She insists on cheeseburgers for breakfast on the weekends. And Tony, who in his old life would have laughed at the idea of cooking, learns to cook them. He learns to make the smiley face out of pickles on the bun because he saw it in a magazine and she liked it. He learns her stuffed animals' names. He learns her favorite color, which changes every 2 weeks. He learns to braid her hair, badly. He learns to be the kind of father his father never was. And every single time he does one of these small, ordinary things, in the back of his head, he is 6 years old again, in a kitchen, holding a gadget, waiting for someone to look up. And Morgan, every single time, looks up. He talks to her about real things, too. He doesn't talk down to her. When she asks where the moon goes during the day, he explains orbits. When she asks why bees buzz, he explains wings. He builds her tiny machines, tiny robots that walk across the kitchen counter, tiny propellers that spin when you blow on them, tiny lights that flicker on when you clap. The garage, which used to hold prototype armors and weapons-grade nanotech and a wall of suit-up rigs, now also holds a kid-sized workbench with safety goggles on a tiny hook. He calls it her lab. She calls it her lab. Pepper calls it absurd, and then she takes pictures of it on her phone and sends them to Happy.
Happy, of course, comes by. Often. He has appointed himself Morgan's honorary uncle. He shows up with cheeseburgers, which is now apparently his entire personality. He sits on the couch and lets Morgan put stickers on his forehead. He drinks beer with Tony on the porch, and they don't talk about the Avengers. They don't talk about Peter. They don't talk about the things Tony lost. They just sit. Sometimes they watch the lake. Sometimes they laugh at nothing. Sometimes Tony, in the middle of a beer, gets quiet, and Happy lets him be quiet, because Happy has known him long enough to know when to let him sit. Rhodey comes too. Rhodey has the same rhythm. He doesn't push. He doesn't ask. He just shows up, helps Tony with whatever stupid garage project he's working on, eats whatever Pepper has made, and goes home. Pepper has called this more than once the world's slowest healing process, and she's not wrong. Tony does not talk about the snap. Not to Morgan. Not really to anyone. He has a few therapy sessions over video chat in the second year, and then he stops. Not because he doesn't believe in it, but because he doesn't really know what to say. The therapist asks him what hurts. Tony, who could give a TED Talk on any topic in the world without a single note, doesn't have an answer. Everything hurts. Nothing hurts. He won. He lost. He saved part of the world. He failed to save the rest. He has a daughter. He doesn't have a son. He has Pepper. He doesn't have Peter. He has the man he always wanted to be. He doesn't have the team he built it with. It's complicated. It's so complicated that he just stops trying to explain it and decides, instead, to live. There is a picture in his garage, on a shelf above the workbench, that he never takes down. It's a Polaroid. Peter Parker, in a Stark Industries internship shirt, holding up some absurdly fake-looking award certificate that Tony gave him as a joke. Peter is grinning, both thumbs up, his hair a mess. It's from before. From a Tuesday afternoon in the lab, when Peter came over after school to work on his web fluid formula, and Tony pretended to be annoyed about it. Tony walks past that picture every day. He doesn't touch it. He doesn't move it. He just walks past, and sometimes, when nobody's looking, he stops. He stops, and he looks. And he keeps walking.
Morgan finds the picture once. She is 4 years old. She climbs up on the workbench in defiance of every rule her father ever made, grabs the Polaroid off the shelf, and brings it down to him. She asks who the kid is. Tony, who has not said this name out loud in 3 years, takes the picture from her hand. He holds it. He looks at it. He says, "That's Peter." She asks where he is. Tony, who is a brilliant liar in every other context, can't lie to her. He tells her Peter is gone. She asks if he was a friend. Tony, after a long moment, tells her, Yeah, he was. He was a really good friend." Morgan asks if she would have liked him. Tony, smiling, his eyes wet, tells her, "Oh, kid, you would have loved him." He puts the Polaroid back on the shelf. He picks Morgan up. They go inside for dinner. He does not bring it up again. But Pepper, walking past the garage that night, sees him standing in front of the shelf, his hand on the picture, his head bowed. She doesn't say anything. She just stands in the doorway for a minute. Then she walks away. He builds things during the day. He doesn't build weapons anymore. He doesn't even build suits, really. He builds gadgets. He builds a coffee maker that grinds the beans, brews the coffee, and waters the houseplants in one cycle, because Pepper has been complaining about the houseplants dying. He builds a fishing rod with an automatic reel for Happy's birthday. He builds an actually working hoverboard for Morgan's 4th birthday, and then is immediately yelled at by Pepper, who confiscates it until Morgan is older. He builds a little holographic projector that Morgan can use to draw constellations on her bedroom ceiling at night. He builds, in his way, a life made of small things. A life he could not have imagined when he was 35, standing on a podium, telling the world he was Iron Man. And in the back of his head, every single day, no matter how peaceful the morning, no matter how loud Morgan is laughing in the yard, no matter how warm Pepper's hand is in his, there is a clock ticking. There is a thought he cannot turn off. There is a kid out there, somewhere, in the dust. There are 3 billion people in the dust. There is a universe that he didn't save. He doesn't talk about it. He doesn't act on it. He just carries it, like a weight in his chest, like the shrapnel all over again. And one day, the doorbell is going to ring, and the weight is going to come back, and he is going to have to make a choice. And he knows it. He just doesn't talk about it. He just keeps making the pancakes and reading the stories and braiding the hair and pretending every single day that this is enough. Because for a while, it is. He is woken up one Saturday by Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, and Scott Lang. Scott has just escaped from 5 years stuck in a place called the quantum realm, a microscopic dimension where time works differently. He has been in there for 5 hours, his time. He came out 5 years later. He has an idea. He thinks they can use the quantum realm to travel through time. He thinks they can go back, find the Infinity Stones, undo the snap. Steve and Natasha bring him to Tony's lake house to ask for his help, because Tony is the only person on Earth who could maybe figure out how to engineer a stable time machine. Tony tells them no, politely but firmly. He invites them to lunch. He says he's happy. He says he has Morgan. He says they had their shot and they lost. He says everyone who was supposed to come back to him already came back. He looks at Pepper. Pepper looks at him. Steve looks at his old friend and he doesn't push. He gets it. He really does. He says he understands. He doesn't argue. He just shakes Tony's hand and leaves. And Tony watches them drive off down the dirt road. All 3 of them, into the dimming afternoon. And he goes back inside the house. He plays with Morgan. He puts her to bed. But he can't sleep. He sits up in the kitchen, in the dark, drinking water. He goes to his garage. He pulls up a holographic display of the quantum realm.
He runs the equations Scott showed him. He hits a wall. He hits another. He says to Friday, "Solve the inverse stochastic equation." Doesn't work. He says, "Run a Mobius strip inverted." Doesn't work. He stares at the equations. He stares at them again. He scribbles on a napkin. And in the middle of the night, the math clicks. Time travel, the way Scott described it, can work, but only with one specific trick. A Mobius strip run inverted across space-time. The math fits. It fits. He sits back. He realizes he's just done what nobody else on the planet, except maybe Bruce Banner, could have done. He has figured out how to travel through time. He turns off the display. He doesn't celebrate. He just sits there, in the dark of his garage, alone. Because now he has to decide. Now he has a choice. He can do nothing. He can keep his wife. He can keep Morgan. He can let the world stay broken. Or he can give everyone else their families back. Give Peter back. Give Strange back. Give half the universe back. But risk losing what he has now. He walks back into the house. He looks at Morgan, asleep in her bed, her tools scattered across the floor. He sits on the edge of her bed. He puts his hand on her hair. He doesn't sleep that night. Not at all. By morning, he has decided. He drives to the compound. He walks into Steve's office. He throws a small, hand-built, Mobius-shaped sculpture on the table. He says, "This is a hostage situation. I'm going to do this. But I'm doing it for her." He points at the sculpture. He says, "We go in, we get the stones, we come back, and then we put it down. I get the kid back. You get a chance to undo everything else. But when we're done, we're done." Steve says yes. Steve says he understands. They shake hands. The team comes back together. Bruce, who has now merged with Hulk into a peaceful, intelligent green giant in glasses. Thor, who has gained 400 pounds, grown a beard, and become a beer-drinking, video game-playing recluse in Norway. Rocket, Nebula, Rhodey, Clint, who has spent the last 5 years as a brutal vigilante murdering criminals in Tokyo to deal with the loss of his family. Scott, Steve, Natasha, and Tony. They reassemble. They build a time travel platform in the compound. They sit around a table, drinking soda, eating sandwiches, and planning a heist. The biggest heist in the history of anything. They are going to steal the Infinity Stones from across time and bring them back to the present to undo the snap. They go in pairs. Cap, Tony, Scott, and Bruce go to New York in 2012 during the Battle of New York. Tony's job is to get the Tesseract, the Space Stone, from inside Stark Tower. Things go wrong. Loki gets a hold of the Tesseract during a moment of distraction. Tony, recovering from the snafu, accidentally tackles his past self in the elevator. Cap fights his past self in the stairwell. They have to improvise. They go to 1970 to a SHIELD base where Tony knows the Tesseract is being stored. And it's at this base that Tony, sneaking around in a costume, opens the door to a small office to find his father standing at a coffee machine. Howard Stark, alive. 20 years before Tony was born, more or less. Tony's heart almost stops. He freezes in the doorway. He has not seen this man in person, in the flesh, in real time, since he was 21 years old. He has seen home videos, he has seen newsreels, he has seen old photographs in the basement of the Stark mansion. But here, right now, is his actual father. Younger than Tony is now. Younger than Tony was when he started becoming Iron Man. With a full head of dark hair and a thin mustache and a slightly tired look in his eyes, holding a paper cup of coffee, complaining to himself about the machine. Howard, naturally, has no idea who this dorky-looking bearded visitor in a flight jacket is. He just glances up, asks if he needs something, and goes back to fiddling with the coffee dispenser. Tony, who has not spoken yet, who is still processing the fact that this is happening, manages to ask if he can join him. Howard shrugs. Why not?
They start chatting. Howard, it turns out, is at this military base in the middle of nowhere because he has been working on a new project. Howard is, by all accounts, deeply distracted, deeply stressed, and not particularly enjoying his day. He mentions in passing that his wife is about to give birth. He is going to be a father. Any day now. He is, by his own description, terrified. Tony, who has been carrying around the wound of this exact man for 40 years, suddenly realizes something he has never let himself realize before. His father, the legend, the icon, the unreachable myth on every magazine cover of the 1960s, was, at this exact moment, a regular man, hovering around 40 years old, with a knot in his stomach about a baby he had no idea how to raise. He was just a guy, a nervous guy, holding a paper cup of coffee, trying not to think about the future. They start to walk. Howard, who is leaving, who has a fancy little newborn baby gift in a bag for his wife, who is buying flowers on his way out, asks Tony if he wants to walk with him to the car. Tony, calling himself Howard Potts because he can't think on his feet fast enough to come up with anything better, walks with him. They go down a corridor. They step out into the late afternoon light. They walk through a parking lot. Tony, listening to his father talk about being a dad, listens harder than he has ever listened to anyone in his life. He is 12 years old again. He is 6 years old again. He is standing in a kitchen, holding a gadget he built, waiting for his father to look up from the paper. Except now the father is right here, in front of him, asking him for advice. Asking him for advice on how to be a father. Tony, swallowing hard, tells Howard that fatherhood is going to be all right, that nobody knows what they're doing, especially at the start, that you're going to mess it up. You're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to miss the moments you should have been there for. You're going to think the work is more important than it is. But the kid, in the end, is going to know that you cared. The kid is going to forgive you. The kid is going to grow up and look back, and the bad stuff is going to soften, and the good stuff is going to come into focus. The kid is going to be okay. Howard, holding the bag, listens. He doesn't argue. He nods, slowly, like a man who needed to hear exactly that and didn't know it. He asks Tony if he has any kids. Tony hesitates. He says, yeah, a daughter. Howard smiles. He says, daughters are different. Tony almost loses it right there. They get to Howard's car. Howard puts the bag in the back. He turns to Tony to say goodbye. Tony, on the verge of falling apart, can't help himself. He hugs his father. He just grabs him and pulls him in. Howard, awkward, a man from a generation that didn't really hug, pats Tony's back, a little startled. He doesn't pull away. He just stands there and lets it happen. Tony, his face buried in his father's shoulder, thanks him for everything he ever did, for the country, for the work, for the time and the sacrifice and the long nights in the lab, for all of it. Howard doesn't know why this stranger is thanking him, but he can tell, from the way Tony is shaking, that this matters. He just says, "You take care of yourself." And he gets in his car. He waves. He drives off. Tony stands in the parking lot in the late afternoon light, watching his father's car disappear down the road. He never sees him again. He never gets to. Howard, in a year and change, will hold a baby boy in his arms and have no idea what to do with him. In 21 years, Howard will be killed on a road in upstate New York by a man wearing a metal arm. In 40-some years, Tony will be standing in the rubble of a parking lot on the other side of his own life, looking down the road where his father just drove off. And he will feel, for the first time, something like peace. Not forgiveness exactly,
Not closure exactly, just peace. The man he hated, the man he loved, the man he built his entire personality around resenting, was a regular guy. A scared, decent, awkward, complicated man who didn't know what he was doing and tried his best and missed his shots. And Tony, the son, the kid, the angry boy in the kitchen with the gadget, finally lets it go. He lets all of it go. The anger, the wound, the 35 years of trying to prove something to a ghost. He stands there in the parking lot in 1970, in the late afternoon sun, and he sets it down. He picks up the Tesseract, which is in a briefcase right next to him on a bench he's been using to hide it. He gets back into position. He goes home. But he is, for the first time in his entire life, a man whose father, somewhere in another timeline, walked off into the rest of his life knowing that someone, somewhere, was grateful for him. And that has to be enough. And in that moment, somehow, it is. They come back to the present with all 6 stones. Almost all of them, except Natasha. She and Clint went to a planet called Vormir to get the Soul Stone, and the price of the Soul Stone is a life. Clint tried to throw himself off the cliff. Natasha beat him to it. She fell. She died. She got the team the stone, and the team comes home, all of them, dirty and bruised and victorious. And they look around and realize there's a member missing. They hold a moment of silence. There is no body. There is no funeral. There is just the team, in the present, in a quiet room, knowing that this is what it costs. Bruce, with the new gauntlet Tony has built to safely hold the stones, snaps. He has the most resistance to gamma energy of anyone alive, so he is the only one who can do this without dying. He puts on the gauntlet. He concentrates on Natasha. He tries to bring her back too. He can't. The Soul Stone is a non-refund. But he can do the rest. He looks at the team. He snaps. The world turns gold for half a second. Birds start chirping outside. And on the other side of the country, in a high school in Queens, dust starts coming back together into people. Peter Parker stands up off the floor of a barren planet on the other side of the galaxy, gasping for air. Dr. Strange opens portals. The dead come back. 3 billion people return. The universe, after 5 long years, exhales. And then, the compound explodes. Past Thanos, the Thanos from 2014, has followed the team back through time. He has put together what they did, and he is going to undo it. He blasts the entire Avengers compound off the map. Tony and Steve and Thor are barely alive in the rubble. The fight is on. They wake up in the ruins. They limp out into the open. Past Thanos is standing on a hill, calmly waiting, with his children of Thanos and a fleet of warships in the sky. He has decided, on the spot, that the entire universe deserves to be wiped clean instead of just half. He thinks the universe is ungrateful. He's going to start over. The 3 Avengers, Steve, Thor, and Tony, walk out into the field to face him. 3 guys against an army. Steve picks up Thor's hammer, and the entire audience in every theater on Earth lost their minds. He swings Mjolnir. He fights Thanos one-on-one. He gets thrown around. He gets knocked down. He stands back up, broken shield in his hand, hammer in the other. The army marches forward. Steve is alone in the field. He stares them down. He whispers a name. He says, "On your left." And then portals start opening, hundreds of them. Doctor Strange opens portals from Wakanda, from Asgard, from New Asgard, from Sakaar, from Titan, from every planet, every faction, every army that the Avengers have ever made friends with. Black Panther steps out of one. Sam steps out of another. Bucky, Wanda, the Wakandan army, the Asgardians, the Ravagers, the Guardians, the Sorcerers. Peter Parker in his Spider-Man suit swings down. Captain Marvel arrives. And Steve Rogers, on the edge of the battlefield, raises his shield and says the two words he never said back in the day.
He says, "Avengers, assemble."
Tony, on the ground, looks up. He sees in the swirl of portals every single person he ever fought beside, every single person he ever fought against, every single hero he ever inspired, walking out onto this field, in armor, in capes, in spandex, in royal robes, in alien plate, in patched-together flight suits, in homemade costumes, in everything they have. He sees T'Challa, who he met during the worst week of his life in Berlin. He sees Bucky Barnes, the man whose face he tried to bury his fists into in a Siberian bunker. He sees Wanda Maximoff, the woman whose mind he reached into in Sokovia and accidentally gave the nightmare of the apocalypse to. He sees Sam Wilson, who took Cap's side at the airport, who he hasn't seen in 5 years. He sees Stephen Strange, who he met on a curb in Greenwich Village right before the worst day of his life. He sees the kid. He sees Peter.
And his heart, which is 2/3 dust and 1/3 metal at this point, somehow manages to fill up. Because every single one of them is here, because one way or another, he opened the door. He started this. He flew the first nuke. He walked out of the first cave. He stood on the first podium. And now, 12 years later, the army he accidentally built by being himself has come back to fight the war he can't fight alone. He is not the smartest man in this field anymore. He is not the richest, or the strongest, or the most powerful. He is just one guy on a team. And it's the best feeling he has ever felt. What follows is the biggest battle ever put on a screen. Hundreds of heroes against hundreds of thousands of Thanos' army. Pepper, in her own custom Iron Man suit that Tony built for her 2 years ago, just in case, flies in next to him. He doesn't even look surprised, he just smiles. They fight side by side, husband and wife, in matching suits on the same battlefield he once swore he would never bring her near. The two of them blasting through Outriders in synchronized arcs, the most absurd, most romantic combat sequence in the history of anything. He looks at her at one point, mid-air, and just laughs. Because his life has finally caught up with his wife's, and she is somehow better at this than he is. Peter swings around, finds Tony in the chaos, gets to him, hugs him in the middle of a war zone. Tony, who hasn't seen the kid in 5 years, hugs him back like a man hugging his son. Peter is jabbering, breathless, telling him about the snap, telling him he doesn't know what happened, telling him about the dust, telling him about Doctor Strange, telling him 100 things at once. Tony is just letting him talk. He doesn't say much. He just holds him for a second longer than he needs to. He thumps him on the back. He smiles at him. He doesn't say what he wants to say, which is that he loves him, which is that he missed him, which is that he is the closest thing he had to a son for 2 years, and he has been carrying his weight for 5. He just says, "It's good to see you, kid." And then the war pulls them apart. They get separated. The fight goes on. The gauntlet with the stones in it becomes the prize. Whoever has it has the war. Captain Marvel takes it across the battlefield in a desperate run. Thanos sees her, throws his sword through her armor, knocks her halfway across the field. He picks up the gauntlet. He puts it on. Carol comes back. She tries to stop him from snapping. She wraps her hands around his fist. He headbutts her with the Power Stone. She goes flying. He raises the gauntlet. And Tony, bleeding, broken, on the ground,
looks up. He sees Strange in the crowd. Strange holds up one finger. Strange holds up his single finger. The one out of 14 million possibilities. The one where they win. Tony understands. Tony's eyes go wet. Tony nods. He knows in this exact second what it means. He has known on some level for weeks. He has known since the lake house, since the night he stayed up running the math, since the moment he decided to come back. Maybe he has even known since the cave, since Yinsen, since the first time he ever put on a suit. Maybe his entire life has been pointing at this exact second. Maybe this is what Yinsen meant. Don't waste it. Don't waste a single second. Do the one thing only you can do. He looks at Strange. He looks down the field at Thanos. He looks briefly at the sky. The way he looked at it 5 years ago on a porch. The way he has looked at it for 10 years, ever since the portal over New York. He has been waiting for this his entire adult life. He didn't know it, but he has. And Tony Stark, who has been running from this moment his entire life, who has built suits to avoid this moment, who has flown nukes into space to avoid this moment, who has tried to retire from this moment, runs at Thanos. He throws himself onto Thanos' gauntlet. He grabs the Infinity Stones. He pulls them, slowly, painfully, from the metal of the gauntlet into his own armor, into the suit, into the new nanotech reactor on his chest. The nanotech reorganizes. The stones lock into the back of his right hand. The energy of the universe, of every Infinity Stone, of all 6 fundamental forces of reality, pours into Tony Stark's body. The radiation is immediate and catastrophic. The right side of his torso is burning. The skin on his right arm is bubbling, blackening, peeling. His face is searing. His suit, the thing he spent 12 years perfecting, is the only reason he is still standing, and even it is failing. He looks up at Thanos. Thanos looks down at his now empty gauntlet. He looks at Tony. He understands. For a half second, time stretches. Tony, dying, looks at Thanos, and Thanos, who has spent decades grinding his will against the universe, who has murdered gods, who has erased half of everything that lives, looks at this small bleeding human in a metal suit, and for the very first time, looks unsure. He knows what Tony is about to do. He knows there is nothing he can do about it. The Mad Titan, in the last second of his life, is the one who doesn't know what to say. Tony smiles, a small, tired, defiant smile. He says, "I am Iron Man." And he snaps. The light blinds the field. Thanos disintegrates first. He sits down on a rock, almost calmly, almost like he expected it, and lets himself crumble. His children, his army, every single one of them, turning to dust on the battlefield in a slow, expanding wave. The Outriders, the Chitauri, the flagships in the sky, everything Thanos brought with him through time, gone. The whole invading army, gone. The Earth is saved. The universe is saved. Half of everyone who was lost is back. Everyone who chose to come back, came back. And Tony Stark, kneeling in the ruins, his right arm and the entire right side of his torso scorched black from the radiation of the gauntlet, his mask retracting, his face exhausted, falls to a sitting position against a piece of rubble. The fight is over. The army is gone. The world is quiet. Rhodey gets to him first. He limps over, kneels beside his oldest friend, doesn't say a word. He just looks at him. He sees what the gauntlet did. He knows. Tony, half his face singed, blood on his lips, looks up at Rhodey. He doesn't say anything. Rhodey shakes his head. There's nothing to say. The two of them, who met as cocky young men at MIT, who flew jets together, who built suits together, who got drunk together, who fought together, who almost lost each other a dozen times, are looking at each other for the last time. Rhodey reaches out.
He puts a hand on Tony's shoulder. He doesn't try to fix it. He doesn't try to talk him out of it. He just stays there with him, like he always has. Peter Parker pushes through the rubble. Peter sees him, and Peter falls to his knees. Peter is crying. Peter is telling him, "Mr. Stark, we won! We won! You did it!" He is babbling. He is shaking. He is 15, the same age he was when Tony pulled him out of his bedroom. The same age he was when Tony bought him a fancy suit. The same age he was when Tony chewed him out on a roof. He has not aged. The world has aged 5 years, but Peter is still the kid who got dusted in Tony's arms on a planet on the other side of the galaxy. He is telling Tony they did it. He is telling Tony they won. He is telling Tony he can rest now. Tony looks at him. The light in his arc reactor is dim. He smiles, very faintly. He raises a hand, just barely, and touches the side of Peter's face, the way a parent touches a kid's face when they want to say something they can't say with words. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. Peter understands. Peter, sobbing, is pulled back gently. He doesn't want to go. He stays on his knees in the rubble. Tony's eyes stay on him for another half-second. And then they move. Pepper comes running across the battlefield. She sees Peter. She sees Rhodey. She sees the suit. She gets there. She kneels next to him. She puts a hand on his cheek. Hey, Tony, look at me. We're going to be okay. You can rest now. She is using the calmest voice she has ever used. She is not crying. She will cry later. Right now, she is being the strongest version of herself she has ever been, because she knows in this moment that her job is to let him go without making it any harder than it already is. She tells him Morgan is safe. She tells him she loves him. She tells him he can rest. She is the same Pepper who told him for 15 years that he didn't take care of himself, that he worked too hard, that he was going to burn out. And now, finally, she is telling him to rest. And she means it. Tony tries to speak. He can't. He looks at her. He looks past her, briefly, like he is seeing something far away. A garage, a lake, a small girl in oversized boots holding a tool she doesn't know how to use yet, asking him a question. Morgan, Pepper, the lake at sunset, the Polaroid on the shelf. Yinsen in a cave, smiling for the first time in months. Howard in a parking lot, getting into a car. Steve, somewhere, raising a shield. The kid right next to him, crying. Every face he ever loved, in a flash, in a half-second. The arc reactor on his chest flickers, once, twice, and goes dark. He dies on a battlefield in upstate New York, with his wife's hand on his face, his best friend on his right, the kid he loved like a son on his left, his name on every history book he can imagine, and a smile, small but real, on his lips. Tony Stark dies, the man who started the whole thing, the man who pulled himself out of a cave, who fought a Russian engineer with whips, who flew a nuke through a portal, who built Ultron and then unbuilt Ultron, who took on a king, who fought his oldest friend, who adopted a kid in spandex, who married the woman he loved and gave her a daughter, who walked into the worst odds in history and snapped his fingers and won. He's gone. The battlefield for a moment is silent. The army of heroes who were screaming and fighting and tearing through ruin a second ago, slowly, one by one, see what has happened, and slowly, one by one, kneel. Black Panther kneels, then his sister, then his army. Doctor Strange, who has known for years that this is exactly how it ends, kneels in his robes in the dust. Sam kneels. Bucky kneels. Wanda, with tears running down her face, kneels. The Guardians kneel. The Asgardians kneel. The Sorcerers kneel. Thor, the actual god, his hammer at his side, lowers his head. Steve, on his knees beside Pepper, lowers his head. Every single hero on that field, hundreds of them, every single one, kneels for the man who started this. The richest, dumbest, smartest, loudest, most arrogant, most loving guy who ever put on a tin can and called himself a hero. They kneel. Because they know, all of them, every single one, what he just did for them. The funeral takes place at the lake house, the same lake house where he lived, alone with his family, for 5 years. The Avengers, every single one of them, come. Steve, Bruce, Thor, Sam, Bucky, Wanda. Vision is not there because his body is still gone after Thanos. Clint, Natasha is not there. The Guardians, in dress shirts and ties, looking awkward, sit at the back. Peter, in a black suit, his eyes red, doesn't say a word the entire ceremony. He stands behind Aunt May, his hands in his pockets, his face frozen. The way kids look when they're trying very hard not to fall apart in public. Happy is there, holding back tears the entire time. Rhodey is there, on his exoskeleton crutches, his jaw clenched. Nick Fury is there, in the back, in sunglasses, with his hands folded in front of him, looking like a man who has lost a soldier and is not allowed to cry about it. Maria Hill is next to him. Carol Danvers is there. Wong is there. T'Challa is there with his mother and his sister. The Wakandans came across the world for this. Hank Pym, Janet, Hope, and Scott are there. Even people Tony barely knew, people he met once at a fundraiser, people he sent flowers to when their kids were sick, people from his Maria Stark Foundation work are there. Howard Stark and Maria Stark are not there. They have been dead for 30 years. But Tony's father would have been proud. He would have been so proud. He would have, finally, said the words. And Tony would have, finally, heard them. Pepper places the first arc reactor, the one Yinsen built in the cave, the one with the engraving that says proof that Tony Stark has a heart, on top of a small wooden funeral wreath in the lake. She lets it go. It floats out on the water. The reactor glows, slowly, gently, blue, drifting on the surface of the lake at sunset. The team stands on the dock. They watch it. Morgan, 6 years old, in a black dress, holds her mother's hand and watches the light float out into the middle of the water. She doesn't really understand. She knows her daddy is gone. She knows he is not coming back. But she is 6. She is still figuring out what gone means. She just stands there and watches the blue light on the lake. Pepper beside her holds her hand. Happy on her other side has one hand on her shoulder. Nobody talks. The water laps against the dock. The reactor floats, slowly, into the middle of the lake. The sun goes down behind the trees. The light fades. The blue reactor keeps glowing, even as the sky turns dark. Inside the house, after the ceremony, Pepper plays a recording for Morgan. Tony made it weeks ago, in his garage, on a hunch, on a feeling. Just in case. Just in case the heist didn't work. Just in case the math went wrong. Just in case. The recording plays on the screen. Tony is wearing a worn t-shirt, his hair a mess, an old reading lamp behind him. He sits in front of the camera. He smiles. He talks to Morgan. He talks to all of them. He tells them not to be sad. He tells them he had a great life. He tells them he loved every minute of it. He talks to Pepper specifically for a second, looking right at the lens, like he is looking right into her eyes across the timeline. He tells her she is the best thing he ever did. He tells her he is sorry for every fight, every late night in the workshop, every panic attack, every time he came home late or didn't come home at all. He tells her he would do every minute of it again just to get to her in the end. He tells Morgan, "I love you 3,000. He says it twice. He doesn't say anything else. He doesn't need to. The recording ends. The screen goes black. The house, for the first time in a long time, is silent. Morgan, on the couch, in her black dress, holding a stuffed rabbit, doesn't say anything. Pepper, sitting next to her, doesn't say anything. The Avengers, scattered across the living room and the porch, don't say anything. The lake outside is dark. The arc reactor is still floating somewhere on the water, glowing faintly where Pepper let it go. Eventually, one by one, people start to leave. They hug Pepper, they squeeze Morgan's hand. They walk down the gravel driveway to their cars and their portals and their teleporters. The night gets quieter, the crickets come out, the lake settles. Pepper eventually picks up Morgan, who has fallen asleep on the couch, and carries her up to bed. She tucks her in. She kisses her forehead. She walks back down the stairs. She sits alone on the porch in the dark, in the same chair Tony used to sit in. She doesn't cry. She doesn't really do anything. She just sits and breathes and looks at the lake. And out in the middle of the lake, somewhere, the blue light keeps glowing. The world goes on after that. Slowly, carefully, without him. Bruce keeps building things. Thor leaves Earth with the Guardians of the Galaxy to find himself, to try to figure out who he is without his hammer or his crown. Steve, who took the Infinity Stones back to their original timelines to fix the past, decides to stay behind in 1948. He gets the dance with Peggy Carter he never got, lives a full life, comes back as an old man in his 90s to give the shield to Sam Wilson, who becomes the new Captain America. Sam picks it up. Bucky moves on. Wanda struggles with grief. Peter Parker goes back to high school. The world rebuilds. The cities come back. People remember who they lost. People remember who came back. And every single one of them remembers the man who made it happen. Peter especially is broken for a long time after. He sees an old building in Queens with a giant mural of Tony Stark on the side. He stands in the alley below it, looking up at the painting. He cries. He doesn't say anything. He just stands there, looking up. He sees Tony's face. He sees the suit. He sees the words painted underneath. He sees the man who pulled him out of his bedroom. The man who taught him what it meant to be a hero. The man who told him that if you're nothing without the suit, you shouldn't have it. The man who hugged him in a field of fire after 5 years apart. The man who died so half the universe could come back, including him. Peter takes a breath. He swings off into the night. He goes home. He keeps being Spider-Man. He keeps trying to make Tony proud. Morgan grows up in the lake house. She inherits Tony's old workshop. She wears his oversized helmets around the yard. She climbs into the saved Iron Man armors in the basement and pretends to fly. She tinkers with old tools. She is 6, then 7, then 8. She is going to be just like him. And Pepper, who is the strongest person in this entire story, watches her every day and sees her husband in their daughter's eyes. The two of them, mother and daughter, sit on the dock in the evenings and watch the sun go down on the water. Sometimes Pepper tells her stories about him. Sometimes she just sits in silence. The lake reflects the sky. The arc reactor floated out on it 3 years ago, and they both still think about it sometimes. There's a deeper thing here that I think about a lot when I think about Tony Stark, that's worth sitting with for a second before I wrap this up. Tony Stark is a guy who, at the beginning of his story, has every single advantage in the world. Money, genius, looks, charisma,
power, influence. He has all of it, and he is miserable. He doesn't know he's miserable. He drowns it in champagne and women and one-liners. But he is. He is empty. He is alone. He is just performing a version of himself that he learned from his father, and his father learned from his father, and so on. The cave breaks the chain. The cave forces him, for the first time in his life, to sit with himself, to stop performing, to see, in the eyes of a man named Yinsen, what a real human being is like. And Yinsen plants the seed. Don't waste it. Don't waste your life. Don't waste this. And Tony spends the next 11 years trying to figure out what to do with it. And every step of the way, he gets it wrong before he gets it right. He goes home and tries to be the savior alone and almost gets killed by his uncle figure. He builds an army of suits and almost kills his marriage. He builds an AI and almost kills the world. He fights his best friend and almost kills himself. He says goodbye to his father in a parking lot in 1970 and almost doesn't make it back. Every step is the wrong step in the right direction. Every mistake is the right kind of mistake, and every single one of them is teaching him the same thing: that he was never the smartest man in the room, that he was never the most important man in the room, that all of his money and all of his genius and all of his power and all of his suits, in the end, are worth less than the people he loves. Pepper, Rhodey, Happy, Peter, Morgan, even Steve, even Bucky in a way, even Yinsen, who died for him in a cave on the other side of the world before any of this ever started. That's the journey. That's why his story works. Because he is not born good, he becomes good. He builds himself, suit by suit, mistake by mistake, into the man who can, when the moment finally comes, snap his fingers and end the war. Because by the time Thanos has the gauntlet up in the air, Tony Stark has already done the work. He has already learned the lesson. He has already let go of the ego, the fear, the noise, the pride, all the things that defined him at 35. He has Morgan in his head. He has Peter in his arms. He has every single person he has ever loved on the field with him. And he knows, in that final second, exactly what he is doing. He is choosing them. He is choosing all of them. He is choosing a future that he isn't going to see. He is doing the most selfless thing the most selfish person in the world has ever done. And it costs him everything. And the wild part is, he's smiling when he does it. He's tired. He's bleeding. He's seconds away from being gone. And he is at peace. Because he is Iron Man. He has always been Iron Man. From the moment he walked out of that cave, that's been who he was. The suit was never the point. The suit was just the metaphor. The real iron was inside him the entire time. The thing that lets a man, after every failure, after every loss, after every betrayal, get up the next morning and keep trying. The thing that lets a man go from the worst version of himself to the best version of himself in 11 years, on screen, in front of an audience of billions, and earn every single step of it. There's a thing in his bedroom Pepper finds, much later. A small wooden box. Inside it, two things. One is the old flip phone Steve sent him. He never used it. He never threw it away. He kept it. The other is a photograph, a blurry one on actual film. It's a picture of Yinsen, the cave doctor, the man who built him the original arc reactor. The man who told him, "Don't waste your life, Stark." Pepper doesn't know who he is. Morgan doesn't know who he is. Nobody in Tony's life ever really knew who Yinsen was. But Tony carried his picture in his bedside table for over a decade. Because Yinsen was the man who set him on this road. Yinsen was the man who, dying in a cave, gave Tony the only thing he ever really had to give.
He gave him a reason to be different. And Tony, in the end, did not waste it. He saved the world. He saved his daughter. He saved his wife. He saved his friend. He saved a kid from Queens. He saved 1,000 other people he would never meet. He took 1,000 bad decisions, 1,000 sleepless nights, 1,000 panic attacks, 1,000 betrayals, and 1,000 reconciliations, and he turned them into a man who could, in the end, do the only thing that mattered. He died for them. All of them. Knowing exactly what he was doing, knowing exactly what he was leaving behind, and every single person he saved knew his name afterwards. Every single one. That's the legacy. That's the man. That's Tony Stark. Not the suits, not the parties, not the speeches. The man, on his knees in a field of fire, smiling at his daughter's face in his head, saying 4 words and changing everything forever. The man who heard, in a cave at the worst moment of his life, "Don't waste it," and decided, "All right, I won't." We all know how this story ends. We all watched it. We all sat in our seats with our hands over our mouths when his arc reactor flickered out. But what I think is worth remembering, the thing that makes this whole story stick with you for years, is that Tony Stark, at the very, very end, was happy. He was scared. He was hurting. He was about to lose everything. And he was, in that final second, completely at peace. Because he got there. He earned it. He went from the man who didn't know what to do with his life to the man who knew exactly what to do with it. He went from the man who hated his father to the man who, in 1970, in a parking lot, said thank you to him. He went from the man who couldn't say I love you to the man who said it 3,000 times. He went from the man who saw an alien army above New York and panicked to the man who saw an alien army above his own home and snapped his fingers. He fixed it. He fixed all of it. He paid the price. And in a small lake house in upstate New York, his daughter is growing up. She has his eyes. She has his mind. She has his stubborn streak. She's going to be brilliant. She's going to be loud. She's going to be a handful. And someday, when she is old enough, her mother is going to sit her down on a porch and tell her about her father. About what he was like when he was young and dumb. About what he was like when he was older and broken. About what he was like when he was finally, after everything, the man he was supposed to be. She is going to tell Morgan everything. And Morgan is going to grow up knowing exactly who her father was. Iron Man, the man who saved the world. The man who lit the way for everyone else who came after. The man who was, in the end, the very best of us. So that's it. That's the entire story of Tony Stark, from the cave in Afghanistan to the lake house in New York, from the magnet stuck in his chest to the snap that ended the war. 11 years, 11 films, hundreds of hours of his life, on screen in front of a global audience. A character who started as a punchline about a billionaire playboy genius philanthropist, and who ended as one of the most beloved fictional characters of an entire generation. People named their kids after him. People got tattoos of his arc reactor on their chests. People cried in theaters when he died. People still cry now when they think about it. He is, in every sense of the word, the kind of hero we don't get very often. A man with no powers, no magic, no mutation, no God in his veins. Just a brain, a checkbook, and a heart that with enough time and enough pain learned how to love. If you've made it this far, thank you. I hope it brought back a little bit of the feeling you had the first time you watched him fly. The first time you watched him take off the helmet on a podium in 2008 and say those 3 words.
The first time you watched him sit alone in a snowy cabin in Tennessee in front of a Christmas tree, trying to figure himself out. The first time you watched him hold a dying kid in his arms on the surface of an alien planet. The first time you watched him, on his knees, in the rubble, choose all of us over himself. He didn't waste it, not 1 second of it, and neither should we. Take care of each other. Be kind. Build something. Try even when you fail. Try especially when you fail. And remember, in the end, that what matters isn't the suit. What matters is what's inside. The truth about Tony Stark, the truth that the suits and the snark and the smirk and the speeches always made it easy to miss, is that he was always, underneath all of it, a guy who was trying. Just trying. Trying to be better than the man who raised him. Trying to be worthy of the woman he loved. Trying to be a father he never saw growing up. Trying to be the kind of friend Rhodey deserved. The kind of mentor Peter deserved. The kind of partner Pepper deserved. The kind of man Yinsen, in the last seconds of his life, told him he could be. And that trying, when you look at the whole arc of his life laid out end to end, that trying is the entire point. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't supposed to be. He was a guy. He was a guy with a great brain and a worse temper, and a heart that, with enough time, learned to outshine the both of them. And by the time the curtain came down, he was a better man than anyone who knew him at 35 could have imagined. Including, maybe especially, himself. I love you 3000. See you next time.